Awesome. All right. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this year's Reach Out and Read annual meeting. We're looking forward to sharing and learning together on this beautiful Friday morning. If you haven't already caught on, this year's theme is early relational health. Before we dive deeper into the good stuff of why these relationships matter so much and what that has to do with Reach Out and Read, I just have a few housekeeping tips to go over to keep things running smoothly throughout the day. So if you can please mute yourself while speakers are presenting, you'll be able to unmute and ask questions by audio following each of our presentations. If you have questions throughout the day, feel free to use the chat box to keep the conversation going, and we can refer back to that. To find the chat, it's a little conversation bubble in your Zoom toolbar. Any messages in the chat will be viewable for all attendees and speakers to see. If you're using your phone for audio today, you can press *6 to mute and unmute yourself and *9 to raise your hand if you have any questions. If you're using your computer, you can use the raise hand feature, which is located under the reactions little smiley face on your toolbar, and then just click raise hand and we'll call on you to speak. In preparation for our breakouts later today, please list your first and last name as your participant name. If you don't know how to change that, you'll go under the participants icon in your Zoom toolbar, and you'll hover over your name and click the blue More button, and then click Rename. Hopefully this doesn't happen, but if you have any technical difficulties throughout the day, you can contact the lovely Alex Rogers. And Alex is going to put her information in the chat right now, so you have that available. You should have received a conference program via email, but Alex is also going to be putting that in the chat just so you can have that for easy viewing throughout the day. We'll be doing shorter introductions for our speakers to save on time, but their full bios are available in the conference program. We hope that today provides a new or greater understanding of the concept of early relational health with concrete ways to practically apply this to your work with families or in your clinic in the community. And most importantly, with a strengthened mission and purpose within your Reach Out and Read programs. I will now turn things over to our fearless leader, Reach Out and Read Wisconsin Executive Director, Karen Mahoney, for an update on Reach Out and Read Wisconsin.
Thanks so much, Amber.
In your control, Karen, 1 second.
Thank you so much. So I am thrilled to welcome everyone to another Reach Out and Read annual meeting. This is our second virtual annual meeting, so we hope to see everyone in person in the future. And it's not moving for me. Oh, there we go. Sorry, I've got a delay. I did turn off my screens. So that is me, but let's move on. So we have close to 90 people with us on the phone today, which is fantastic. And feel free to enter your name and your clinic or organization in town in the chat box so people can see who it is that's joining us. We have 6 of our Reach Out and Read Wisconsin Advisory Council members, 8 community partners or funders from the Fox Cities area and statewide support. And we, of course, have many people joining us from practicing clinics. We've got 6 clinic managers, 11 docs or other providers, and about 30 clinic coordinators or site support staff who are the engine that drive all of Reach Out and Read programming in the state. These professionals are from more than 50 clinics from throughout the state and represent 21 health systems. And we also, as usual, have a staff from clinic in the application, and we appreciate your patience as we have been working on staff capacity. We also, one of the benefits, I'm always looking for silver linings. One of the benefits of a virtual meeting is that we're able to have people join us from afar. So welcome to our 6 colleagues from the Reach Out and Read Network from Carolinas, Georgia, and Virginia. And I do not want to forget our friends and book vendors from All About Books and Books for School. Amber, can you just advance the slide for me? It's not working. Sorry. So to let people know, or to remind people, we had a big internal switch this year. And in January, we moved our organizational and fiscal structure to Reach Out and Read National Center. So we're now part of the 501c3. This move has helped our staff in terms of greater networking opportunities among professionals around the country, access to some greater support through National Center, for example, fundraising support, greater access to professional training related to Reach Out and Read for our staff, and more opportunities for leadership for us. Okay, Amber. I usually talk about several topics, and today, as usual, will be growth, quality, and partnerships. Go ahead. So this is actually for growth. You can move on. This is the first year that we actually have had a decrease in the number of participating clinics. This is related to 2 issues. First, we've had a close on moving clinics through the application process since the summer of 2019, so we haven't added a lot of clinics. And there's been more than the normal number of clinic closures that happen often in rural areas. So we're now at 258 clinics, and we do have about 40 clinics on hold. We appreciate your patience, and we'll chat more about that in a moment. But we did have about 40 clinics join in 2019. So even though the number of clinics have gone down, our impact has not gone down, it has gone up. So children served in the past year, we're now on a fiscal year of July to June, that's gone up about 10,000 children. So we're at 167,000 children in the state, and the books distributed went up 20,000, 241,000 books in the state. Okay, Amber. And where we are in terms of Reach Out and Read Wisconsin at the national level, I always like to provide this picture. We remain at the 7th state with the most clinics and the 6th largest affiliate. Not every state has a statewide affiliate. And we also remain we're considered one of the higher quality affiliates in the nation, and that is all the work of the clinic staff. Thanks, Amber. We are in the middle of a growth in our state office staff. So we are hoping to near the end of a hiring process for a development manager. That'll be a new position for our office, and we're hoping that person will start in November. We'll also be hiring 2 programmatic staff, a program director and a program specialist, who will be working directly with clinics in the western and northwestern area of the state. And we will provide posting information in our clinic newsletters so that you all can help us advertise for those clinics. Next, please, Amber. We're looking forward to several new things in 2022, and we will be opening our application again. This time we will doing it by invitation. We don't want to be putting ourselves in the position of having to open and close due to staff capacity. So we will be prioritizing clinics that are serving families and communities that are experiencing the greatest challenges, that can really use the extra support right now, as well as working to move clinics off the waiting list. On to quality, which is always one of my most favorite topics. Go ahead. So we all are aware that COVID-19 pandemic is continuing, and I just want to put out there that we also are aware that the health industry and frontline health providers and staff are really still at the front lines bearing the brunt of this continuing pandemic. Even though nobody's talking about that anymore, we are really aware of it. Clinics are continuing to experience challenges. As I mentioned, we had a higher number of closed clinics this year. Well child visit numbers seem to go up in January, but it seems like it fits and starts back to normality, which the clinic people here fully understand. Some clinics have struggled with book distribution rates with books and just not even having time to let us know because you're short-staffed. And everything is always seeming to be pulled towards COVID issues. So we recognize that some clinics have had bandwidth issues, which have been making it hard to meet with our staff. Despite all this, we continue to be inspired daily by the partnership we have with our participating clinics. And somehow we beat a progress report submission rate in July with 97% submission rate. We only had about 3 clinics that took the COVID freeze pass. And so we know how committed you are to your programs. We have more than 90% of our clinicians trained, so we weren't adding new clinics, but staff were adding people to a contact list and getting them trained. And the rates of our high quality clinics have gone up, which is again pretty amazing. They've been around a third, and they've moved up to 44% of our clinics. So that just shows us that when clinics are continuing to do it, they're always looking for ways to improve what we're doing, and that you all have a priority to be supporting families through this program, and we thank you for that. Go ahead, Amber. So I'm always thinking about ways that we can improve our game for the next year and ways that we can improve our support to our clinics. We, with our new program staff, are really hopeful that we'll be able to hold visits, at least virtually, with most of our clinics this year. And our statewide staff are really interesting also in deepening the conversations with clinic staff. So you'll notice a change in the site visits. Some of you may have noticed this already. We're moving away from all those checklists and really working on spending time talking about the things that you'll be hearing about today: early relational health, how what you do in the clinic is supporting the relationships between children and families, and how that impacts the development of children, and how we can help you do that better. We also will be looking to increase the impact with the families that we're already serving by launching our Beginning at Birth initiative. Thanks, Amber. And so Reach Out and Read Wisconsin our staff has always talked about Reach Out and Read as a birth to 5 program. And we know that the earlier you intervene, the greater the impact. And with our greater understanding and our moving our lens of talking about Reach Out and Read, not purely as a literacy promotion program, but putting early literacy promotion within the context of that's a tool to help strengthen the relationships with parents and children. We really have the opportunity now to really intentionally increase the support we can give to families during those earliest months when they're most vulnerable and really eager for the support. And it's an opportunity again to support the families that are struggling the most right now due to systemic social, economic, and racial inequities that have been exacerbated by the pandemic. The other thing that we're really hoping with this launch is, yes, it's going to be a big lift to get through, but we know that Reach Out and Read brings joy to the clinics. Their faces light up when they talk about the impact that it has with the families. And Dr. Anna Miller-Filtzwater will tell us later today about the more clinical aspects, but we're hoping that bringing this intervention down to birth will even provide more opportunities for increase in staff enjoyment in your clinics. Thanks, Amber. So how are we going to do this? We've got 260 clinics. So we're looking at a 3-year rollout starting in early 2022. We're going to be doing about a third of the clinics each year will be invited to initiate. And we are prioritizing, again, families that can be experiencing greatest challenges right now and have the extra support could really be of use. Phase 1 will have 2 phases. So phase 1 for each clinic will be the first year, and that will include, as you can expect, new training. There's new version 3 training online. Anyone that's already done it doesn't need to redo it. There'll be some extra training for the Reach Out and Read teams. There will be workflow additions, and your Reach Out and Read staff person will walk you through all that. And there will be 4 additional books. So in the long term, this does increase the book budgets by about at least 40%. But in recognition of this and of the extra lift that the clinics are doing, Reach Out and Read Wisconsin has raised the funds for this start, and we will be doing it for the future, to pay for 100% of each clinic's books in the first year for beginning at birth, 50% of the books in the second year, and then in the third year, those books will just be included in our calculations for our regular book support. So we're really hoping that this helps clinics phase in with what their book budget needs will be in their third year. Thanks, Amber. In phase 2, we're looking at creating a collaboration with Early Head Start. We're doing this at the state level, and we're going to be creating opportunities for the local level. We want to be able to improve the health and wellness of children and increase your access to data so that your quality data records are accurate for what's going on, and improve knowledge and understanding of professionals in both spheres so that the access for children for programming and that experience of families in both spheres improves, so that we are doing the best that we can by the families that both organizations serve. Thanks, Amber. So by doing this, how we're going to do this is we have an Early Head Start task force that will be forming that has members from clinics and Early Head Start, urban, rural, tribal. We are going to be creating the templates that you will need, testing out the templates, looking at the best practices. So the intent is to have something already that we can just hand to you as a package to have it added to the workflow as seamlessly as possible. Thanks. Go ahead, Amber. Partnerships. This is one of the things that is really important for everything. Networking is important, and everything really does come down to relationships. And so we are excited about continuing and our new partner opportunities. So we are continuing with the Wisconsin Infant Toddler Policy Project, which I talked about last year, which has a larger Reach Out and Read as part of it, but the larger focus is on the daycare crisis in the state and trying to provide supports to increase the slots and increase the pay, and it will really help get things back to normal in the state when families have a safe and high quality place for their children to be while they're at work. We're excited about the Early Head Start collaboration, as well as the opportunities for Reach Out and Read Wisconsin to create a template that other states can use. One of the things that I will be doing with, after I hand off some of my fundraising and other duties to the new staff, is that I will be spending more time working on our relationships with health systems at the leadership level, so we can have conversations about initiatives like the Beginning at Birth initiative to explain that to the system, so to take the burden off the clinics, but also help systems understand where we're more moving towards help with our partnership on those levels, as not just health systems, but other entities in the state, including the state of Wisconsin. So our $500,000 confetti, please, that we received in this year's biennium budget is being funneled through the Department of Health Services. And so I'm really looking forward to the opportunity at time to develop relationships with projects and programs within those departments that really align with what we're doing so that we can improve service for children. Thanks, Amber. So to end up my talk, here has been our stable and stalwart team for several years, and I just want to assure everyone that we are committed that even though we're planning on doubling our staff size, that our team will remain with the same culture, with the same mission-driven people that are focused on supporting you and your work to improve and support families in the state. Thank you so much. This is the end of my talk, and I now have the joy of introducing our medical director, Dr. Dipesh Navsaria, who wears so many hats. I thought this morning that somebody needs to write a new book, kind of on the caps for sale theme that could describe all the many things that Dr. Navsaria does. They all focus on children and families and improving support to children and families in our state and across the nation. Dipesh, take it away.
Thank you so much, Karen. And first of all, this section I titled Relational Beginnings because of our theme, of course, but also because really this is all about relationships, right? And one of the relationships we have that is so amazing when I stop and think about it is the relationship that we have with all of you and with all of your colleagues who couldn't make it today, for one reason or another. I want to say that I know how difficult and challenging it is to get time to do anything away from clinical work, especially with all the upheaval and chaos and catch-up appointments, and probably like a whole bunch of your colleagues are busy frantically trying to figure out how in the world they were supposed to order COVID vaccine in that 12-hour window that they got this week from BHS for the younger kids, and so on and so forth, right? So thank you for being here, and thank you to all the people out there who might be, catching this on a recording later, or even don't ever get a chance to really watch this, because we do appreciate you. We appreciate the time that you put to this. We appreciate the thought you put to this. And most of all, we appreciate the shared sense of mission that we have and you have for really thinking about the well-being of children and families that are out there. I wear, as Karen noted, I wear multiple hats even within the Reach Out and Read universe. I'm the medical director here. I'm also vice chair of the board of directors at Reach Out and Read National. And I'm always proud to be able to talk about what we've done in Wisconsin over the last decade plus. I'm always proud to talk about quality. I mean, 97% getting the reports in, that is fantastic, right? Like there's still a pandemic and all this distancing and all this crazy going on out there. And you folks are turning it in, right? And again, when we talk to people about our model, these things matter. I know how much it can feel like paperwork and numbers and busy work and all that. But just yesterday, I was on a call with a congressman's office about a Reach Out and Read initiative that we're doing nationally. And again, it helps me so much to be able to say to them, let me talk to you about our quality numbers. Let me talk to you about how we collectively, nationally, stick to the evidence-based model. I don't want you thinking that we're just, going off the rails here, and we have the numbers to prove it. That's where that work you put in matters, and it does make a difference. So I do want you to know that and understand that. So let me stop my momentary rambling here and just get my slides pulled up here. Okay, we should have that pulled up. And can someone give me a thumbs up that they can see that? Great, wonderful. And I'm just going to re-pull open my chat so I can just have that open. All right. So one of the challenges about having such a wonderful array of speakers for later this morning is that I have to try very hard not to give away the plot of what they're saying too much. They are both good friends and colleagues that I value. Luckily, I had a chance to peek at their slides, and I hope that anything I add about thinking about early relational health will be additive and not duplicative in different ways. So we are going on a voyage today talking about relational health, and that voyage is going to consist of thinking about what is it how do we think about it in our clinical world and the world we do, the work we do with Reach Out and Read? And it's also going to be about thinking again about those important first 6 months of life, which we've always talked about, but now we have a strength and an approach to how we're doing this, and a deep plan. So that's sort of thinking about the voyage of relational health. Now, this word relationships that we throw around, and we've thrown this around a lot over the years at Reach Out and Read. The thing is, it's really easy for someone to look at this word and say, oh, yes, yes, that's so nice, right? And completely then move on. And the thing is that there's a deep body of science, of work, of thought, and evidence. And we've known that for a while. And now what we're saying is, how do we practically apply this in meaningful ways that are out there? And that's really been the excitement over really the last several years, and particularly in the last couple of years. Thinking about relationships and how they matter is so important. I'm going to leave talking about the details and depth of early relational health to one of our later speakers, but I want to step back a little bit and remind you of a few things that many of us have said for a while, right? It's this recognition that if we care deeply about children's health and development trajectories, and of course we do, because we all work in this space, right? This is what we do day in and day out, is how do we do the job of developmental assurance, right? We got the medical stuff that we do all the time, and that's important, and that's why we focus on it. But then we also recognized a long time ago that socioeconomic environment matters, right? That the zip code a child is born and brought up in matters more than their genetic code. But then we recognized there was still something else that we weren't quite articulating. And let me be clear, we weren't articulating it in the medical world well. I think our colleagues in psychology and social work and home visiting and all, they had this figured out. And okay, great. Took us a while, but we got there. Is this idea of attachment and relationship patterns. What's the microenvironment children are in? How are they interacting with their parents, their siblings, their aunts, their uncles, their neighbors, their early childhood providers, right? Anyone that's in their environment, that those countless little interactions, which in and of themselves are really small, but they add up to a tsunami of developmental progress when we get it right. So how do we make sure that the balance of those interactions is great and not bad or absent or anything like that? Recognizing that within the context of a complicated and challenging world that people live in. So in 2014, the American Academy of Pediatrics released a statement that's often known as the Toxic Stress Policy Statement. And this was the time that we clearly, as a field of healthcare, articulated this notion that had been growing and developing, and that different people had done so much work on, that we said, this is important, and this is part of what we do in the work of pediatrics, whether you're approaching it through the pediatrician world, the family medicine world, or any of the many other fields that work with families. Well, the great news is this year, this summer, we had the revision to that come out, the second edition, so to speak, which you can easily find online if you haven't seen it yet. It is marvelous. It has taken this to the next level. And I want to highlight for you why it's the next level, because if you're talking to this about your colleagues in your clinics or your administration, or even boring your family at the dinner table about this, about guess what I heard today, maybe you don't have that experience, but certainly my children, I think they left for college mostly so they didn't have to hear me go on about this. That the key thing that's different, because we always ask, well, what's new, what's different in this statement that wasn't there all those years ago, are really that the old statement had a key problem to it. The idea of toxic stress, which is an important concept, it looks for what's missing. It looks for what's a problem. It looks for what's wrong. Now, this should be somewhat familiar because we do this in healthcare, right? We are trained to look for problems, and we almost don't know what to do when there isn't one, right? This is how medical training often goes. And instead, this statement now moves to this idea of what's supposed to be there, what's working, and what's going on that's right, and let's articulate it, recognize it, and for crying out loud, let's tell families that they're getting it right. Right? We're kind of awful at remembering to do this. It's so small, yet it's so important and so powerful in so many ways. So from the statement, toxic stress tells us the problem. This is important, and it explains how so many of our big problems are rooted in our shared biology, but there's different experiences and opportunities. And this is where I always remember the wonderful phrase that I heard somewhere, and I have no clue who originally said it, that talent is equally distributed throughout the population, but opportunity is not, right? And that's our problem there. This statement now says, let's give you one more thing, the solution. Relational health explains how individual and families and community capacities support all these elements that buffer adversity and resilience across the life course. Now, there's an acronym in there, SSNRs, and you might say, wait, SSNRs, that's like Prozac and Zoloft, right? No, that's SSRIs. SSNRs are safe, stable, nurturing relationships. Our speakers will talk more about that later today. But here's the effect that they have. They allow a child to feel protected, connected, and competent. Isn't that what we hope for every child that we send out? I was working in urgent care last night, right? And it's wonderful as I usually walk out with a family as they're heading out the door. And it's just great watching them hold their child or hold their hand. And you can see this image, right, of a child. They feel protected. They feel that connection. And I hope they feel able to do the things that they want to do in order to flourish and thrive, right? Which is ultimately our goal in any and all of these things. So remember that there is this wonderful line here from Urie Bronfenbrenner. Oops, and my slide went forward a little too quickly there. This is the heart of it, and this is actually quoted at the beginning of the statement because of how important it is. I'll read it out loud because I think it is so important. In order to develop normally, a child requires progressively more complex joint activity with one or more adults who have an irrational emotional relationship with the child. Someone's got to be crazy about that kid. That's number one, first, last, and always. Can you imagine a renowned researcher and scientist in this field saying it comes down to someone being crazy about that kid? But that's really what the data tells us, right? So how can we make sure that that happens? And I want to add one more thing here, because I think there's actually an element missing here that Bronfenbrenner, he knew, but I think he didn't quite elevate it as much as he could have. Someone's got to be crazy about that kid, and that someone has to be able to follow through on it, right? And that's what we spend a lot of our time doing is how do we make sure, yes, we want kids to flourish and thrive, but we got a second goal here. How do we help adults be successful in that job? That's the other thing. And we sometimes forget that, right? That they need to be able to act on that feeling of I'm nuts about this kid and I want to do anything I can to be able to help them. So if you think about developmental progress for children, right? Some of you may have seen this image that I use in some talks. You got the kids on a healthy trajectory. This is birth to age 5, and you could go further, of course. You got the kids who we consider quote unquote high risk, right? This is your X 27-week preemie, right? Higher risk of developmental delay, et cetera, relatively easily labeled, right? And in developmental follow-up clinics and things like that. And then you got the kids who fall into that in between, what we sometimes call at risk, kind of slightly, not a great term, but whatever, right? That there's things that are getting in the way of this optimal progress that they're not going to do as well. So the thing to recognize, remember, is that adversity pushes down on all these curves, right? It pushes them down, it makes them not thrive. So what do we need? We need that positive pushback. We need those protective interventions, and we need the upward pointing arrows, right? So many of these are the things we talk about and do through Reach Out and Read, the anticipatory guidance, the reading, proper discipline, high quality preschool, all that. We can also help parents learn how to be responsive if they're not completely sure how to do it, or they're not sure they're getting it right? Sometimes they just need reassurance, and that's great. We can do that. good high quality language stimulation, early childhood education, and then of course specialized services, early education, home visiting, et cetera, et cetera. All these things are the plus side, right? These are the positive elements that matter. Because when we think about the solution side of this, there's key elements that we need to think about. We need to build the capabilities in parents, in families, in communities, right? That we need all of these elements to be capable of doing this good interactional work. We need to build capacities. I'm sure many of you who are clinicians who do this frontline work with parents, if you ask about shared reading and you develop a good sense of trust, et cetera, then here's what happens, right? That sometimes they say, I know how to do this. I want to do it. I love doing it. I can't do it because I'm working a second job. I'm not home in the evenings, right? So again, what's getting in the way of them being successful, and how can we help with that, whether it's at the family level, the community level, or at the societal level to make those changes? What can we do that are based in homes and communities and not make people move around? How do we address root causes, have long-term effects, use a prevention mindset wherever possible? How do we leverage those first 1,000 days of life? Where do we use evidence where it's available to guide us, not to necessarily constrict us? And then there's the scaling issue, right? How do you take things to scale? And I want to be key that this isn't just solely the domain of something like Reach Out and Read, right? Because our ways of supporting relational health are so important in so many different ways. Think about the well child visit. And this is actually a line that I use with the physician assistant students I teach. I tell them, there's no one magic way to do a well child visit, right? The templates are there for documentation. They're not there as a guide for exactly how you're supposed to do it. And I think most of us know that, but a lot of our learners, I think, struggle with this. And I think the key is to help them understand that the most important people in the well child visit, the most important agenda is the agenda of the people in front of you, right? And I always say, start off with something like this. Before I go down my list of things, so I got things I can ask, what would you like to discuss today? This is a fundamentally relational approach. It's a family-centered approach, and it puts them at the forefront, which is the entire point. Okay, they're supposed to be the ones who are key and how we can think about it. And here's the thing, magically, when you ask a question like this, you're strengthening your relationship there. You're saying, I care about you and I want to know what your priorities are, right? And I think we're used to doing this in sick visits, right? How can I help you today, right? But I think sometimes we can fall out of this or away from this when we think about the work of preventive care that we do that is so important in different ways. This is an acronym I use with like students, right? Ask concerns, go through history, environment, child. Ask then again about concerns now that they've gotten comfortable, and then do your anticipatory guidance and so on. But notice, right? We're going to concerns, and then we're asking it again. Again, what are their needs? What are their wants? What has occurred to them? Again, it's fundamentally a relational approach that makes a key difference. And I want to tell you, this is backed up in multiple ways. Okay, we have Bright Futures, right? If you look at the Bright Futures Pocket Guide, right? Look at what's on the Pocket Guide in the upper left there, right? Your observation, your developmental surveillance, right? This is key about what you should be doing over and over and over in all of these visits. And notice the relational elements that are in there, right? Things to tell and offer families. Asking families, how is your child communicating what they want? Do they point to something they want, and then you watch to see if you see what they're doing, right? Again, this is about relationships. This is about that serve and return, that back and forth. It's embedded there. When you start looking for it, you realize, hey, it's been here. We're just calling it out in different ways. Because again, if we want those successful fluent readers, there's a whole chain of things that need to happen right in order for kids to have that, to be educationally successful. And the lever that we're trying to pull ultimately is this in Reach Out and Read, right? How do we get to those adults who are comfortable, confident, and capable of sharing books well with young children? And remember, Bright Futures talks about literacy, okay? It's in there. There's a whole pull-out box about how important this is. I know, because I wrote this box and I'm very proud of it, right? But again, It's in there in Bright Futures. It talks about how important it is in different ways. It's also in things like the Nelson textbook of pediatrics. Okay, if you look in the well child preventive care section, okay, there is a whole element in there on, a whole couple of lines. There wasn't much room in there about evidence-based approaches to using early literacy assessment and promotion, and mentions Read, Shout, and Read by name. Yes, I co-wrote this section too, right? But this is not something that we're making up. This is actually in the work that we have out there. And if we can use shared reading as a scaffold to be able to achieve and accomplish all these things, it does ultimately make a huge and dramatic difference. And I'll remind you of the prescription to read that I like using as the summary of Read, Shout, and Read. Look at what's central in this prescription, right? What's the thing that has to happen? It's share books together. It's not read books. It's share books together, right? I changed it a whole bunch of years ago when I realized I wasn't emphasizing well enough the relational elements of this, and that this is ultimately what powers so much of what we do. And remembering that Read, Shout, and Read really does play so many elements. So thinking about the big picture here, in the policy statement, it talks about 3 aspects of prevention: supporting nurturing relationships, reducing the external sources of stresses on family, right? This is the referrals, the connections, the intervention programs that we have and all that. And how do we strengthen their core life skills? If you think about what you do in these perspectives, I think it'll help you kind of keep your eye on the prize. And I think it'll come through to your families even more strongly about what's important, what matters, and how it makes such a big difference there in different ways. Because the thing is that this is a wonderful moment in time in history about how we think about all this, that we have the silo, the world of healthcare, we have the world of early childhood education, home visiting, social work, and so many different ones. I could put 800 circles on here, but when you look and take all these circles and just move them all and look to say, where do they intersect? Where do they connect? What's at that point where we all agree on something? What you really have at that intersection point is the work that we're doing in relational health, the work that we're doing in Read, Shout, and Read. And this is what biologist E.O. Wilson called the word consilience, that this is a jumping together of all of these elements that are out there, that different fields have come to this. I told you earlier, this isn't something new that just we thought up in the world of pediatrics or healthcare or medicine or whatever, right? But all these folks, we've been talking about it and around it in different ways. And we're now at this moment where we recognize we've all been reaching the same conclusion. And that's actually extraordinarily powerful, because it means, wow, there's something to this. There's an amazing depth. And when we see this jumping together of evidence, of thought, and shared direction, now we can all go on this journey together. So I think there's many different ways that we can talk about all this. And a slide again that I've sometimes used, but I think it's so important, is thinking about this and our role in primary care in the ecosystem. Kids are going to fall. And we got nets. We got nets to catch them, right? That's our prevention net. It's the big net. It's got big holes, but it's going to catch a lot of these kids. Okay, some kids still fall through. That's when you use your second net. It's a smaller net, but it's got smaller holes. This is for children who are more at risk, have greater stressors, right? This is your screening, your targeted interventions. Still some holes. You bring out your smallest net. That's a tiny net. It doesn't have a lot of capacity, but it also hopefully has few or no holes. That's your treatment net. You can't rely just on that treatment net. We see this in mental health all the time, right? Kids are falling off that bottom net because there's too many of them. The important element here is that all of these fit in different ways, and to use the framework that comes from the relational health, the toxic stress relational health policy statement. The first is about how we promote health. The second is about how we identify and address problems when they are there. And the third is how we repair relational health, right? Again, all these concepts are coming together. And I need to remind everyone, all of these levels are necessary. None on their own are sufficient. Okay, So it's not about this is my thing and this is the thing we need to support and forget everything else. Nope. If you're on that first net, if you're in primary care, you need to know who your referral resources are below you. And they need to know who you are and what you're doing to keep them from getting overwhelmed. We are all in this together. It's also the relationships we have as professionals with each other. And do we have healthy relationships? And I want to end on one more relational note here. Many of you have hopefully had the privilege of hearing our National Medical Director, Dr. Perry Klass, talk at some point on so many topics as she does. She also has a wonderful obsession with images from art of the Madonna and child reading together. And I was very happy to be able to visit her when when we were at NYU Florence and one up her. And right in Florence in the Uffizi Gallery, I found a wonderful image of the Madonna and child reading together. And in this one, you can see there's an extra element to it that the child is not only are they doing what we call joint attention, right? That mother and child are both looking at the book together, but you notice the child is pointing. The child is indicating, and you can almost imagine in this next, if there was a follow-up image to this, right? What would happen next? Would there be a vocalization saying, yes, I see what you're pointing at. Yes, I see you, I understand you, and I'm reflecting what I see and see you doing, and I'm validating it. This is in a way the heart of relational health. And I think great artists, like in this case, Santi Di Tito, recognized that and decided to catch it, decided to put it in here as a reflection of this relationship that's there. So this has been around us for centuries. It's been in so many different places, and we just need to learn to look for it in one way or another. So hopefully I've set the table here for a wonderful feast of thinking and talking about relational health this morning, and thinking back to the early years and where some of Reach on Read's elements kind of go through here. It's a delight to be able to spend time thinking and talking about this and introducing some of these concepts. And with that, I will turn it back over to Amber. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you so much, Dipesh. And we did have a question in the chat about if these slides will be available. And I think I forgot to mention this morning that we are recording this whole day. So we will be sharing that on our YouTube page for viewing and sharing after today.
And I'm happy to make the slides available in PDF format.
Great. So if there are any other questions, throw them in the chat. Otherwise, we are going to turn things over to Taylor Tarantello from All About Books to kick off our break. This is just an opportunity for you to ask Taylor any questions you may have with book ordering, just to get a snack, stretch, break, and when you leave, we just ask that you turn off your video and mute yourselves, and return at 9:58, just a couple minutes early, so we can get things moving. And with that, I will turn things over to Taylor.
Awesome. Hello, everyone. I'm so happy to be here. I look forward to this meeting every year. So it's nice to see all of your familiar faces again. I just have one slide and it'll be very brief. We just have our 2022 catalog coming out soon. This will be in January, and most of you are already on our mailing list, but if you want to double check, feel free to do so. You can send me an email or send us a message, and we will make sure that your address is on there to send to you. These are just a couple new titles that we're getting. And a fun announcement, we are getting Hair Love in paperback. we've been working hard to do that. We could only get it in hardcover this year, and it will be in paperback next year. So it'll be a lot more affordable. So we're really looking forward to that. So this is just a sneak peek. And if there are any questions about ordering or the catalog or anything else, do not hesitate to reach out to me. And that's it.
Thanks, Taylor. Again,
Thank
if you guys
you.
have questions for Taylor, you can post them in the chat or unmute and ask a question while we're here on break. But again, take some time to get a stretch in, grab some breakfast snack, and return at 9:58. See you guys soon. Okay, everyone, it is 9:58. We're gonna start coming back from our break. As you come back, again, if you're able to turn on your camera, please do so as we can kind of interact and see everyone throughout the day. I'll just give another minute and then I will turn things over to Depesh to give the honor of introducing our keynote speaker of the day. All right, Depesh, you can take things away with getting us moving into our next presentation.
Thank you so much. It is a delight to be able to introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. David Willis. He and I first met, gosh, it's been 10 years maybe?
More.
Somewhere like that, yeah. So back in the early days of the American Academy of Pediatrics thinking about all this stuff about early brain and child development, and they put together a working group, and somehow mysteriously I ended up on this group. I have no clue, because I realize now that I knew almost nothing, and I was surrounded by people who had been thinking and talking about this sort of work for a long time. And one of the incredible people was our chair of that group, Dr. Willis, and I've learned so much from him, and I continue to learn so much from him with all the work that has happened in the past decade. So he's a fount of information, of knowledge, and has an amazing capacity to help you just reframe all this in a way that helps you realize and recognize what's so important and essential about this work. His bio has been shared earlier, so I will not walk through that, and I will instead give us all the time to learn from Dr. Willis. David, take it away.
Great. Depesh, thank you. I need to make certain that let me put this down, make certain that there we go, optimizing, because I have a few video. And Paul, I'm sorry, just 1 second. I'm having a little trouble getting my slide set here.
No problem.
Give me a second. I'm almost here.
My favorite is whenever you share slides on Zoom, it rearranges your entire screen, and then you have to spend a moment saying, wait, where did my chat go? And where's my video?
I know, my apologies, but here we go. All
Dave, we're
right.
here for you, and I want you to know this entire meeting is a safe, supportive, nurturing relationship for you.
And I appreciate the nurturing relationships, and I assume you can see my slide set, correct?
We can. Take it away.
Oh, good. Well, Depesh, thank you for that really kind introduction. I was going to say the other thing, I've learned so much from you, so I guess that's that mutual dyadic relational learning moment, so it's really fabulous. And your comments about, especially that last visual, the Madonna and baby Jesus pointing, and your comment of what comes next is something I've reflected on a lot. The sense that relationships are also divine, and the power between relationships has tremendous power. And that's the space we're going to actually talk about, that we're all capturing, and that we all know about humanness and the criticalness of relationship, to be human and for all of our well-being is central to the concepts around this work. But we'll move more into the scientific space of this effort, and but recognizing that what we're going to be talking today is bigger than all of us and important for us all to reflect on as we move forward. And so my learning objectives for you all is to think about within your context of regenerate early relational health in your everyday practice. Secondly, talk about the evidence base that surrounds all of this in terms of helping us in child healthcare transformation, also partnering deep within communities. And then thirdly, reflecting on your mindset about the criticalness of being embedded in relationships, shaping your mindset about how you think about the development of the individual within the relational context, thinking about your mindset as to your role in your relationships with families for the benefit that impacts then the outcomes in that sense of a relational health. So that's the space we're going to touch on. And all of us wonderful pediatricians and partners understand that a baby's future starts right now. And I'm compelled by the recognition that every day there's a new group of babies born, some of whom will lose their potential over time. And that's an urgent call to me. And I think it's that same urgent call that you all share with me. And what we've learned over at least my career, and I'm sure now is well understood in your work, is that relational health and the experiences relationally impact the well-being very, very early, immediately at birth. And that embedded experiences of relationship that become embodied in that next generation is happening. And we see it every day. And it's happening every bit in the moment. And that future is now and critically important. And it builds off of a core story of child development that's been well articulated more and more through certainly the work of Shankoff and so many others from the National Scientific Council. But everywhere we're going, we're talking about the core story of child development and mitigating toxic stress and focusing on positive childhood experiences, all of which we talk about now in that sense of the environment of relationships. My journey has been about, now what is that environment? And how do we in healthcare promote it? And what's our day-by-day role with every family we see to be partnering, to honoring the strengths families have, to help elevate and strengthen their capacities, to bring information and sharing with them about the opportunities in front of them, and to keep our eye on the ball that relationships build health, development, and future well-being. That's been my journey. And I think Depeche may remember this day when we were at that little gathering of the AAP, which may be 15 years ago, Depeche, where our small group was really wrestling with early brain and child development. How do we bring that into pediatric care? And one of the conversations happened, and Colleen Kraft, previous AAP president, was there. And she said, well, you know, relationships are a vital sign in pediatrics. I have never forgotten that. And that's also been the driver of my work in terms of elevating the criticalness of relationships as being a driver of health and development. That is the concept we have now in this sense of early relational health. Of course, it describes the positive nurturing relationships that advance physical health and development, social well-being and resiliency, and flourishing is even a stronger word. Relationships, and one might say the positive experiences of those positive nurturing and stimulating environments drives the development of health, social emotional well-being, and education, learning, and future well-being. The relationships are the drivers, the outcomes of the individual skills. Holding on to that concept is really essential to the central of our work. So relationships shape the well-being. And what's also interesting in this work is it's bidirectional. There is a simultaneous healing force that happens from being in the experience with babies that shapes families. And we have seen the neuroscience of the brain changes in young mothers and fathers. We feel it when we're in the room with a beautiful dyadic experience of families together. We know something's really beautiful that happens. And it's been captured in the art that we saw earlier and still continue to see today. Relationships are bidirectional and influential. One might say that at the birth of the baby, everybody celebrates the future and the possibilities. So early relational health may be a new term to some of you, although less so, ever more now that the policy statements come out. But more importantly, it's not really a new field nor a new series of discoveries. It's really built on decades of research out of the fields of child development, infant mental health, neurodevelopment, but trying to grab that focus on the centrality of relationships as the drivers of future health development and well-being, moving beyond the focus on the individual, moving into the social, contextual, and environmental influences that build health and development is really the space we're talking about. And thereby we're into that 2-generational frame. The sense that you can't talk about the well-being of a baby without talking about the well-being of the family and the community they live in, that ecobiological environment. And thereby our practices are forced to begin to shift in the way we think about supporting and partnering with families and being aware of the context they live in their communities. That whole ecobiological process comes together in the way we think about advancing relational health, and the outcome of which is the individual, but it's in the context of the relational frame. In our early work at CSSP, I was really fortunate when I was working with Depeche, I got tapped on my shoulder by a call one day that said, would you consider coming to HRSA within the Obama administration to run the Home Visiting Early Childhood Systems program? You can't turn that down. It's like Depeche said, how did that ever happen to me? How did I get invited? I don't know. But that was an incredible opportunity. And I carried there Colleen Craft's view about relationships are a vital sign, and being in home visiting, recognized that a huge opportunity that we have in home visiting, but it was broadening in people's thinking. And it was interesting. We started talking about relational health. I did at many of the tables I was at in the federal government, and that concept resonated. It resonated actually a little stronger than infant mental health, which has always been not the scientific knowledge of infant mental health is clear, but the messaging framing was stronger in this body of knowledge, strength, and importance when we talked about early relational health than just infant mental health, although the field of infant mental health has driven so much of our work. When I then moved to the Perigee Fund, which was a new foundation in Seattle that was focused on promoting social emotional well-being, I went there with the concept that we can't, treat our way out of the epidemic of weak social emotional skills of children and the growing mental health epidemic, which is a demonstration of the failure of those early relational experiences and trauma, of course. I recognized that we really needed to try to look at how do we communicate about this work ever further. So we engaged the Frameworks Institute to help us about languaging, and we did focus groups, and they did their wonderful studies about the framing of languaging of people's understanding in this culture about early relational health. And what became clear to all of us was that all people understand the foundational nature of important early relationships. They may not necessarily understand early relational health beyond the health system. I mean, public health providers, pediatricians, and like understand the concept ever more of early relational health. But when we move deeper into the community, the sense of foundational relationships as a concept was also deeply clear. But what was also clear in their work in exploring with communities and with the public was two things. When one says, three things. When one says early relational health, people, and they hear early childhood, they think of 3 and above. They don't think of infants. And thereby, anytime we talk about early relational health, we have to be clear we're talking about the prenatal to 3 space, the infant experience, because that's so much of them in its first 1,000 days, which drives development. The other discovery and importance is don't forget that every family dyadic experience, every parent-child relationship lives in the context of their community and their environment. So you can't separate the foundational relationships and well-being from the context within where people live and who surrounds them and who's with them. And then the third important communication we learned was that beyond, when we talk about early childhood and relational health, it's not just solely viewed as, in a utilitarian sense, the sense of building a future workforce and a future for all children and families' well-being. It also has meaning in the moment to people. People value their foundational relationships and their experiences with their babies and children. And you and Reach and Read and all of us in pediatrics understand that because we're witnessing to it. And there's a space of power and opportunity to lean forward where relational health really is at the forefront of every family's interest. They care about their baby's future. They care about themselves and their relations. It's meaningful to them and to the family that surrounds them. When we talk about early relational health, we really are leaning further on promotion, prevention, surveillance, monitoring, that whole sense of the universal nature of promoting strong foundational relationships, but it builds when we have the specialty services like Dipesh alluded to in that beautiful slide of the safety net. We do have specialized services, but we do not have enough of them. So that whole sense of, discovering why are there so many babies in the water downstream that are struggling when what's happening upstream that's really driving why children, infants are falling into the stream of lost developmental skills, really thinking about the foundational drivers and what we do about that, the relational context is a space we're really working on. And so let's look at some beautiful videos to say, okay, what does it look like? And all of you in Reach Out and Read, all of you that are with young families are witnessing relational health every day. Here's one example.
Uh-oh.
In a blink of an eye, you're right into the beauty of this moment, perhaps the divine. You're seeing, look at that affect, look at the shared eye contact, look at the facial expressions together. We know that there's that woo-woo stuff that's happening that drives the development of this baby's brain, physiology, and experience by the nature of that relationship. We all know that if that were not happening, or if there wasn't positive affect in that moment happening, that child's development doesn't develop. The attachment vitamins, as Alicia Lieberman talks about, that relational driver of well-being is visible to us every day in our practices. Let's just watch another minute or two. Imagine. And then ask yourself the question, what's happening there and what's good about it? But let's go up the developmental ladder. Many of you may have remembered this little tweet video that went viral about 1.5 years, 2 years ago, captured the imagination across country right into, in the national news and the like. I mean, not only the shifting the paradigm of wonderful African-American men can enjoy their children, but also the beauty of the moment. And from my standpoint, it captures, again, up the developmental ladder of skills, the relational health experience. Again, I want you to focus your eyes on what's happening between them. Ask yourself what's in the relationship and what are the patterns that each of them are adding to contribute to what you're going to be smiling about and feeling in your heart something very special.
Okay. They need to work on that, right? Yes, okay. Did you understand it though? No. No. Okay. All right. Huh? Oh, no, not this one. This is.
Okay, those of you that are training your wonderful developmental eyes, you could actually begin to do a developmental assessment by observing the interactive space, right? You're seeing nonverbal communications. You're seeing mutual gesturing in response to each other that's timely and committed. You're seeing eye contact, affect. You're seeing a pacing between them, where the father waits for his little son's response, the son waits for the father's response. There's a turn-taking communication process. It's in a positive affective state. It has language involved. It has motor system involved. It has facial expression involved. It has shifts of emotional context. Oh my gosh. And again, 16 seconds. When you have your eyes focused on the relational context, you see a lot of developmental capacities. You're also witnessing the power in the relational space itself. That's the relational health space we're talking about.
Yeah, that's the last one. That's what I was wondering. I don't know what they're gonna do next season because they did some stuff this time. Exactly what I was thinking. Oh yeah.
So amazingly so, we can observe so much in the relational space. And early relational health has a developmental sequence, no surprise. The brain is evolving, as is the parenting skills are evolving. I mean, it's a dyadic dance of development. How many of you that have had children know that you're being developed as your children are developing, right? We're growing with them and developing in unique ways with them. And those of you that have 2 or 3 kids know that each experience is a little different, little variation of a theme. Certainly we can predict the milestones, but there's another layer of experience that's really unique to the dyad itself, right? To the pair itself. And those are observable and sequential. And again, we in pediatrics have an amazing chance to be with children over the first 2 years with frequency. And we get to witness that mutual attention engagement at early, the beginning of that strong responsiveness around 2 to 3, 4 months. We start seeing that enjoyment becomes visible. And those of us in pediatrics used to say, when you walk into a 6-month-old, they ought to be smiling at you, right? Because it's a marker, it's a signal that they're absorbing the positive relational experience around them. And if you don't see it, you're going to get anxious. You should. And so similarly, at around 7 or 8 months, you see the initiation, that cute little baby's capacity to have learned how to evoke a response from someone else in that social context. One would argue is the first marker of not having autism, that ability to demonstrate their ability to create an initiative. And then it becomes imitative. And that sense that the 9 to 10, 12-month-old should be able to wave bye-bye, right? That sense of having learned an imitative skill. That all happens in the relational context or not. And it is bidirectional, and it's part of your observational skills. And as children develop from that imitation process that moves in the shared space to become more and more play and more goal-directed, and hence the whole developmental sequence is happening in that sense of a social developmental process. And we like to say that the social brain development arises from synchrony. It arises from the synchronous interactive experience that get embodied into the next generation. And researchers increasingly are demonstrating that the synchrony that gets embedded in human development at every system of our brain's development, our physiological development, not only what we observe behaviorally at the macro level, or if you do, the slowing the video down to really analyze microsecond analysis, one sees synchrony and strong relationships in the same way that we see the autonomic nervous system becomes attuned and becomes sort of co-regulated in an autonomic sense that sets the stress regulation capacities and the parasympathetic sympathetic responses that we use to regulate ourselves with ourselves or with others. And then we know there are physiological synchronies that get developed, cortisol, serotonin, oxytocin, all of those neurohormones get also entrained by the synchrony of the relationship, as does even brain synchrony in coordinated brain rhythms and EEG patterns that become definitional for all of human interactive patterns. These developmental patterns happen so quickly and so amazingly. So what about beyond this good work we do in Reach On and Read, of course, that's, I like to say, relational health in action. There are other elements that are broadening and building around us. Certainly, Reach On and Read next chapter, I think, is in the forefront of moving relational health forward, which I'm incredibly thrilled about and participating in. You may be aware of the training work out of Seattle called Promoting First Relationships. If either your chapter or Reach On and Read might explore providing an opportunity to dig deeper into how do we as pediatricians be present with families, which is what Promoting First Relationships is about. It's really a strengthening of our skills with families. And it's really incredibly good work. The Mount Sinai Center has taken the Mind in the Making work and made videos and now training elements. You can go online and learn and see and share that with families as well as with yourself. This is really pushing on this movement that's going beyond just we as single pediatricians alone, busy seeing families for 8-10 minutes at a time. We're moving into the concept of team-based care models so that we start broadening our roles. Healthy Steps or Project Dulce are programs where we have an individualized person in the medical home whose job is to worry about the developmental well-being and the promotion efforts as a part of our team. The work's moving in terms of measurement. I've been involved in developing some measurement observational tools for a good while, and there's some work now going on about video feedback that I'll talk on in a minute. We're doing some translation of the early work of looking at actually the foundational elements of emotional connection that are actually those autonomic elements we're talking about, where the autonomic systems become entrained. Those are observable as emotional connection or autonomic emotional connection that are captured within the Welsh emotional connection scale that Richa Reed is exploring. And then there's additional approaches of bringing new interventions into opportunities within the medical home. There's some work with the Video Interaction Project that Ellen Mendelssohn's built that has incredibly strong evidence that when one uses a video feedback system with families, you have dramatic impacts on the social emotional well-being, education readiness. Right now, as we speak in Pittsburgh, there's actually a universal effort of bringing VIP into a whole series of practices in Pittsburgh area for purpose. But as I mentioned before, early relational health is beyond just us in the medical home. It requires I call it an all-in strategy, where the mindset of focusing upon relational support also needs to be a part of our community work and broadening into the sense of shifting that paradigm that it's all about the individual, but moving far more into the relational space. Many families and communities know this. It's just that there are many barriers to supporting relational efforts, but there's movement happening too in communities to really be focused more relationally. So some of our parenting programs are deeply focused on the relational context. Of course, Triple P is. The Circle of Security Parenting, I hope you're aware of that project, coming again out of Spokane, but it's the sense of working on that separation reunion work of parenting, and the Circle of Security Parenting is a very strong program. The Power of Two is in New York City, and this is where the taking an evidence-based model called ABC, Attachment Biobehavioral Catch-up, that was built by Mary Dozier at the University of Delaware. It's an intensive 6-session home visiting approach that's been demonstrated to heal attachment disorders and trauma. What has happened with the Power of Two is that intervention has been brought into communities in the bowels of New York City, the Bronx, Brooklyn, and the like, and has activated parent leadership in the communities for healing and recovery of their people, where there's been this balance of an evidence-based model, then creating healing for community members who then become the ambassadors of engaging, becoming trained, and bringing all of this into the community of healing previous histories of trauma. Incredibly powerful early relational health intervention. Home visiting itself is a relational health intervention strategy. And we have the evidence-based models. When I was at HRSA, you may be aware of the McVie project, Maternal Infant Early Childhood Home Visiting Program, which are the standard evidence-based home visiting models. Nurse Family Partnership, HIPPY, Healthy Families America, PAT, et cetera. Those models are in every state. However, they only touch maybe 1% to 3% of need, and thereby they're not broadly available. What's been happening, you may be aware of the movement, I'm not sure, Depeche, that's happening in Wisconsin, but that sense of universal home visiting approaches and bringing what's called the Family Connects model, which is out of Durham, for providing a universal touch point for all families at birth, with 1 to 3 home visiting options. First, it's almost a welcome baby sense of, welcome with having a new baby, and who are you, what are your needs, and how do we connect you to services and systems? We now have that broadening in a number of communities and states. Oregon is now have a statewide approach. We have small communities happening in Washington State. It's broadening in Connecticut, in Jersey, in Texas, in Chicago. So my point is there's a movement. And all of that, of course, is relationally centric. and the importance of connecting to the context of the family experience that are foundational for relational health efforts. And then the other movement we're witnessing is capturing, like Andy Garner talked about in the policy statement, the whole public health side of this work is activating community organizing, community leadership, and an all-in strategy. And we have communities that are really moving forward. I'll touch on that in just a moment. As we witnessed in those observational moments that we saw with the videos I just shared with you, I've been involved in developing a relational health measurement tool, which is video-based, and Kate Rosenblum, a colleague of mine, has taken this work into Michigan, and she's actually been able to bring the early relational health screen and video feedback into the medical home. First, FQHCs or those more high-performing medical homes that have either a developmental specialist in place or a mental health provider in place, and they're actually offering to families at the 12-month visit to come in a half hour before the visit to let's make a movie and talk about the relationship. And what's striking is 78% of families choose to come in early to, in fact, participate in this way. And thereby it tells you families are begging to learn. And the little process that Kate uses, the teams use, is families appear, they encourage families to just play a little bit together, either with or without toys or books or the like. Take a little video with a iPad, then they turn the iPad around and ask the family to reflect on what they see. What it does is it opens up the communication, but more than that, it also allows families to reflect, but also then say, I'm a little uncomfortable, or I'm unsure, or what about this, or it all opens the door for communication and then referral when necessary. It's a strength-based approach. It's a promotion strategy. And out of that little approach, Kate has demonstrated in basically a minute to 2 minutes, one can observe the relationship is strong, or will it needs a little more attention? So that sense of a pass-fail, how we say, a screening-like process of identifying those that are strong or those where we need to know more or maybe do more is embedded in that kind of effort. The other observational that we've learned is that when one talks about promoting relational health, it actually begins with a conversation. And the beauty of the work we have happening within the Reach Out and Read networks is that's happening with national and then starting to be tested with a few of your affiliates, is it starts with the conversations with families of explaining why relationships matter, and more importantly, and partnering with families about their view of the importance of relationships to them. It begins with conversation, long before we're telling, long before we're doing anticipatory guidance, long before we are assessing. It moves us into the partnership effort. And Reach Out and Read is poised to continue to move upstream in terms of establishing yourself with families as deeply relationally centered, as valuing and honoring the strengths that all families have, and to partner with them upon what their interests are, what their needs are, and then bringing in our knowledge of how do we shape and foster the strengths of those relationships. That partnering in the relationship, just like we've done with book sharing and with literacy promotion, is moving further. That literacy promotion has to land on a strong relational context, right? And so that moving upstream ever more in terms of partnering with families around that strength. And you all have the opportunity every day to see the beauty of this relational context in not only the book sharing itself, but in the relationship itself, where the object is part of the promotion effort. And there are discussions now going on about what's the most appropriate time to bring a book into the diet. And there's various opinions about this effort that's still being explored in terms of promotion strategies to strengthen the relationship itself and the joy that happens there, and our role as Reach Out and Read physicians in that effort moving forward. The front edge of our learning with Reach Out and Read is our explorations by the support of the Einhorn Collaborative with us at CSSP, with Reach Out and Read National and the Nurture Science program at Columbia, to explore how one can bring the knowledge that we've discovered, that's been developed around those foundational elements of synchrony in the relationship that are fundamental to that autonomic emotional connection system of regulation of affect. And the elements are observable: attraction, vocal communication, mutual facial expressive, and reciprocity. Just like we saw in that first video, just like we saw in that second video, those elements of the relational context, shall we say the vital sign of early relational health, includes these elements that are observable or not. And if they're not present, we're exploring how do we promote that effort. Eye contact and emotional communication between an infant and a parent, it appears to be key. The eye contact awakens the alerting response. The emotional communication awakens the attention and the baby's interest in the interactive space. And it's in that element that there's the driving of relational health and emotional connection are built. Dipesh, I'm sure you were as thrilled as I was with the release of this policy statement. And you and I also mused about how long it takes to move a policy statement, but we have it, and it's really cool. And it's really well. Andy Gardner was also on Dipesh's and my little team, as was Pam High, as well as Colleen Kraft. That was our mighty group, right? But the policy statement's excellent because it's transitioning us from just the focus on toxic stress to the relational health. And the first sentence, bless you, Andy Gardner, says, by focusing on safe, stable, nurturing relationships that buffer adversity, build resilience, pediatric care is on the cusp of a paradigm shift that will reprioritize our clinical activities, rewrite our research agendas, and realign our collective advocacy. Oh my gosh, that's where we are. And you and Reach Out and Read are already reprioritizing and strengthening your relational activities, and the research agendas and our advocacy are likewise working in that same kind of way. And Andy would say that promoting relational health and mitigating and healing from toxic stress are the two sides of the same coin. And that's a very powerful concept. Relationships heal trauma and build resilience and recovery. Relationships promote well-being and buffer against the vulnerability of stress that everybody experiences. Those elements are really central to what prevention and promotion is. I like to say we're in a post-ACEs world, please. We're really not only, trauma matters, let's be clear, but more importantly, the positive experiences, not only of past, but also of the moment, are what protect and build the more positive outcomes in face of adversity. And that kind of paradigm shift's a big paradigm shift. The Bob Sagi and the Hope movement is really moving forward. And we know that even the good work that Christy Bethel and Bob Sagi were involved that really reanalyzed data beyond looking at ACEs, but also asking the same families about their own positive childhood experiences at the same time, demonstrated that positive childhood experiences mitigate trauma, which points right back to why focusing on the positive experience, which are relational, let's be clear, and also other contexts, brings us into embracing the protective factors of knowledge that building well-being is a multi-stranded effort that includes, of course, the parents' resiliencies and strengths, includes the degree of social networks and connections, countering isolation. Isolation is such a disruptor to human development, such a disruptor to maternal-child experience. We like to say, right, that a mother in isolation with her baby is an emergency. No mother can do this alone without somebody caring for the mother and her experiences, right? But that's a countercultural view because we tend to think of families as individual items. And when we forget the embedded nature of human development is a health and protective process. Of course, there's the knowledge of child development, and we're trying to focus not just on the timeout and the stimulation side of the story, please. It really is, what are the relational contexts of child development that really matter? That mutual storytelling, the narrative of being together in moments of time. And we're learning it's not hours and hours of interaction, it's moments of beautiful engagement per day that matter. It may be only 1 or 2 times a day with intensity, eye contact, and positive affect. The brain's going to develop itself pretty quickly. My point is that the intentionality of being emotionally connected and relational is what the driver is. And then, of course, we have to think about the social determinants. That's self-evident. But there's also the social connection is also a social determinant. Let's be clear. It's not just food. Of course, it's food, housing, security, safety, and the like. But it's also social connection is another social driver of well-being, all of which creates an outcome that is social emotional competence and the like. Pediatric care is being rethought as we speak, and in terms of really moving into team-based care models, and the work that's going on about expanding home visiting, the whole doula movement, the integration of behavioral health professionals is really strong. But there's a movement that's happening right now in front of us with the Build Back Better agenda that's expanding dollars into communities to expand navigators, community health workers, doulas, that early perinatal support system. And in my state of Washington, the policy space now is going to be utilizing those dollars to train community health workers that are going to be placed in the medical home for then connecting to communities. There's a movement happening that's really exciting and important as we continue to move this work forward. I'm trying to see my time, 8:40, I'm doing fairly well. So we're talking about high-performing medical home opportunities, that sense of team-based care models of where there's an individual focused on relational health work. Certainly our job as we try to read docs is to make visible that relationships matter, but we can, as we start building out our team-based care models, we can add ever more specificity and intentionality to the relational health elements that we've been talking about. I think there's a disruptive change opportunity in front of us with the whole group-based well child care movement, be that from the prenatal centering pregnancy movement that brings families together and pregnant mothers together, but there's a movement of similar processes of group-based well child care that's called centered parenting. And it's incredibly powerful because the 8-10 families become a cohort. They become relationally connected over time. The pediatricians and the developmental specialists and the like become a part of those gatherings, and yet individual care can still be given, but the promotion efforts gets embodied in this social networking group. I'm a strong believer in this opportunity. In Jersey, we now have, I think it's 12 FQHCs that are now adopting the centering parenting model moving forward. And of course, the work is focused relationally and social networking and all the strengthening families factors that are important. So what about in everyday practice? Not just promoting the book sharing and the literacy promotion, but going upstream in terms of those foundational relationship promotions, and more importantly, partnering with families. There are those tiny little moments every day that give relational context opportunity, eye contact, singing, telling stories, verbalizing, being together, that certainly happens, doesn't it? Diaper changing time certainly can happen at bath time, certainly can happen of just the constant parental narrative of as they're doing their good work. You want to keep parents talking, right, to their children, because children are listening and absorbing everything that's being said around them. So keeping the narrative of verbalization of parents talking about what they're doing in the moment matters. Of course, mealtime, of course, doing things together, of course, all the good developmental work is really key to those relational spaces. And I'm a big believer in having been in my training, spending a lot of time about trying to fix early childhood behavior disturbances, then asking the question, how do we prevent, quote unquote, later social emotional behavioral difficulties, or more importantly, then future mental health issues. And I would propose to you, we're not yet talking enough about preventative mental health, which is where I'm leaning, and early relational health processes that are promoting relational health are preventative mental health strategies. For me, the work out of the Circle of Security work, which is looking at the realities that human development is a separation reunion process, meaning even with that little infant video we watched first, there was a moment, and maybe some of you caught it, where the mom came back up in peekaboo and had a big emotional expression on her face, and that little baby disengaged, and appropriately, meaning that engagement, disengagement process is normal to the way the brain and the way the developmental process happens. Just like once a little toddler starts being able to walk, or to crawl and then to walk, there's those natural separation reunion patterns that happen. And so normally in all development is separation reunion. And what happens in those separations for often, right, is the child can get anxious, get hurt, get unsure, then they come back for recovery to resiliency. Just like as kids go to school and are dropped off of school, then they come home, they need to reconnect, they need a little bit of your time, and they need a sense of being heard. That separation reunion, I would propose to you, in our culture, is not valued enough. And so many of the young children behavioral difficulties that we hear about from families is often a story about separation reunion being unattended to. So there's so much necessity of reconnecting, being emotionally connected as a part of building the confidence that gives those separation periods that children are forced to do in childcare or in school enough of the self-regulation juice, shall we say, from the relationship that they can bear it and attend to it. So pay very close attention to how much practice that parents and young children had in that recovery, emotional connection space of co-regulation, because that's the source of what becomes self-regulation. And there's some amazingly good work that would say every emotional system pathway, which are, as you know, in the brain, each is its own neurophysiological pathway. Each emotional state has to have a co-regulation experience to regulate that state to calm. And that becomes the source of self-regulation capacity to bear frustration, surprise, joy, sadness, and fear alone, but it has to be built in a co-regulation space. That's the relational health element that's critical that I would argue in our culture is sometimes lost. A few last thoughts about place-based work. The power of place and the context of place, the neighborhood, the community, the county, and the state. The context of place is a powerful shaper of future well-being. And you may well know that place is unfortunately, the greatest predictor of outcomes of kids, both health as well as developmental. And the movement in early childhood system building is about aligning all of the various leaders and communities together towards that sense of collective impact, all focused on family well-being. That's the movement that's going on forward as we speak. And one example is what's going on in Bridgeport, but we're seeing it in DC, in Portland, in San Antonio. I'm sure you have communities in Wisconsin, certainly in Michigan. Every state has communities that are organizing both systems people, programmatic people rather, early care and education, home visiting, early education, child welfare, public health systems and the like, organizing tables, including parents, as a all-in strategy focused on supporting families. And the movement of our work is focusing around upstream supportive pregnancies and those first 1,000 days. And in Bridgeport, for example, Janice Grinnell, who's an amazing leader there, has been helping that Bridgeport community activate around healing from trauma in order to demonstrate improvement of simply the developmental skills as children enter Head Start. In that community, children even by 3 coming to Head Start, 70% are already developmentally behind. And you know what that predicts. Whereas the movement in Bridgeport is to activate through churches, through neighborhoods, through civic leaders, and through natural leaders, and then the systems of support that go from the medical home to home visiting networks to even the hospital are now getting involved in that effort to create an all-in strategy and measurement to demonstrate movement and change. That's the movement. And we, as the medical system, and you notice in the Bridgeport Investment Bundle, Reach On and Read is a part of that work, and all of us together is really the strategies of moving forward. And in this moment in time, I think I mentioned to you the ARPA funds are advancing, building increasingly a public health workforce. And our friend Charlie Bruner and Kay Johnson and others have begun to talk about a relational health workforce that is not only developmental specialists, community health workers, doulas, and the like, but all of them we're activating to be focused on that perinatal, postnatal space, which is where the relational health opportunity of promotion lies. That sense again of the connection as a social determinant of health, that's what's moving forward in front of us. There's a couple key elements that are essential in our thinking, and Dipesh was with me in our presentation of what we discovered when we did focus group interviews of families in Portland, Oregon, around their views about foundational relationships and the role of the healthcare system. And strikingly, some of the messages were, we have focus groups of rural families, African-American families, and Hispanic families. And the key message from all of these family groups was that if you want to work with us to promote relational health with us in our foundational relationships, listen to us, respect us, value us, see our strength, even though we've had our challenges, but create a relationship that's trusted with us. Those are key elements. All of you in Reach On and Read view that, but how do we lean even further for those families that heretofore are somewhat distrusting of what is increasingly called the colonizing health system that has not necessarily been always equitable in its perceptions and its services and its availabilities for family. And in that presentation, Dipesh, you'll remember this, there was a moment where Brenda Blasingame gave her summary of what she was hearing from this space and what opportunities she was hearing, having been a doula provider now with the Pritzker Children's Initiative, the opportunity that pediatricians have to partner with families. Let me share this with you. Can I come to you? Your first impression.
It's so interesting that part of when you were just speaking, what I was hearing was coming to it around quality, but separating that quality from the quality of quality improvement. And so when I think about that, the two things that were going through my head were meaningfulness and mindfulness. So meaningful engagement with the family, with the parent and with the child when they are in that appointment. And that engagement doesn't have to be for 15 minutes. Meaningful engagement can happen in small, minute pieces. And it can send a specific message to the parent and to the child about your level of caring. I think that's that empathy coming through, and that compassion coming through when you're doing your care, but also the mindfulness piece. I do think that when we think about things like implicit bias, and David, I hear you every time you speak talk about how pediatricians want to show up and how they want to do their work. And for me, understanding the medical system and how the healthcare system works, that does mean taking on the personal accountability for being anti-racist and working on yourself individually as a service provider, so that when you're in those moments, you are mindful and you are coming from a very different place. And especially because of the lack of time and how rushed doctors are and all of those things. I think the meaningfulness and the mindfulness together with that quality can make all the difference in that appointment that is always too short and never long enough.
I think her comments are brilliant, and I think it's part of what my learning objective for all you was, to be reflective and to think about your own mind space of this kind of work. And so those are important for all of us. I can't but comment as I'm finishing up on this current moment of time in the policy space. I have never been more excited about the movement that we have in the moment from the American Rescue Act and what is looking positive, we hope, related to the reconciliation package. But just notice what families, despite the COVID struggle, please, but the economic support of the child tax credit, the expansion of Medicaid supports through, again, with ARPA, basic needs supports, and increasing supports in terms of settings. There's already set a foundation that exists for some of us. And the fact that we have a child tax credit that's out there, we've seen almost 4 million children raised out of poverty as a result of that investment. I'm still thinking about that other 60%, but let's be clear, that's a positive movement. And within current ARPA investments, there's been an expansion of dyadic treatments because of postpartum Medicaid coverage, that pediatric mental health care access lines have been expanded to additional 20 states. And as we speak, there are literally $7.8 billion that are out in states now to build on that community health worker effort. And many advocates in the early childhood space are working to make certain that some of those dollars are not only for COVID and tracing exposures, but also in terms of community health worker upstream prevention services. And if we're fortunate with the American Rescue Plan, the stabilization of the tax credit, the work of the omnibus, which is providing perinatal support for especially African-American family, pregnant women, and the sense of working on trauma, these are leverage points that are really fast in front of us. So finishing up, just a couple more comments. What we've been talking about is this advancing this framework that's dyadic, 2-generational and multi-generational. The bidirectional impact of this for families and for mothers, fathers, and their babies is clear. We would argue it's foundational for equity and recovery with protection. It's science-based. I think it's deeply preventative mental health focused, and we have to continue to elevate that. Even after the policy statement of the AACAP, and the Children's Hospitals came out, we could elevate ever further the prevention effort about mental health. It's not about just teaching parenting, but it's really supporting those natural healing process and developmental process that are relational. And it really is a paradigm shift for us. So my last thoughts are summarized in this little vignette. I actually believe that children develop parents as much as parents develop children. And any of us that have had kids know that that journey is a pact. I mean, we're on a journey with them and they pull from us what they need. And we have to be responsive and reactive, and we contribute a bit. That's, and so I absolutely believe in that mindset that it's a journey together with their child. The second thing I would add is, I also think that the wisdom that goes generationally also is a part of that journey, the wisdom of many. And no parent is perfect, nor do they need to be. And no one parent is responsible for the healthy future development of their child, because it's far more complex than that. But the journey of the multiple relationships are a part of assuring well-being. So that's why culture, that's why I think networks of people surrounding young families is a part of the resiliency strategy that captures healing, recovery, and optimal growth and development. That's how I think cultures have evolved to create who we all are now. It was not one little dyadic experience. It was the collective wisdom, and that was brought to the next generation, either directly or indirectly. And there's a lot of indirect human development that happens when you provide the opportunities for children to grow and thrive from the people that are around them. So my take-home messages about the power of human connection is that just one human relationship can help us weather adversity and protect us from harm. And it comes from those simple, ordinary interactions that are emotionally exchanged and meaningful. And none of us have to be perfect. There's always repair and opportunity. That's the natural process around early relational health. So thanks everybody for my chance of being with you. I know I came unfortunately right up to the hour. I'm happy to take a few questions if you choose. Dipesh, if you want to lead that. But I appreciate being able to be with you and to share in some of my reflections. So Dipesh, back to you.
Thank you, David. Thank you so much. Let's give a round of virtual applause, whether it's the reactions button on screen or affirmative chat comments. I'm continually amazed at how I can hear you speak so many times, and I learn something new from you each and every time, without fail. So thank you. So again, if you have questions, please put them in the chat, or if you have something that's particularly complex or nuanced that you'd like to give voice to, please put that in the chat as well. And we'll try to get to as many as we can. There is a question from Megan Harwell asking, are there any templates for the progress note that help you objectively assess or take note of the relationship during the wellness visit? Are you aware of any way to structure that?
There are various templates out there in various forms and styles. I think there's some within the Bright Futures, but I'm going to step back and say that's exactly what we're building to pass through Reach and Read, right? For the autonomic emotional connection and the templates of observation, and then some of the guidance in terms of building the conversation with family. So I would like to say stay tuned.
Yes, more to come. It's a great question, and all. Alex Rogers comments about children develop parents as much as parents impact child development. I have to say, yes, that really stuck with me as well about that bidirectionality of that work. Amber, I see your hand up.
And Dipesh, let me lean in on that. I would propose to you that it is in that reality that we as a human species have evolved in a positive sense.
Mm-hmm.
You know, trauma has been around forever. And if we just land there, we would not be existing. So there has to be resiliency forces. And I believe the resiliency forces and the health and healing resilience are both in that every infant's born is an opportunity for healing and growth. And I think it's naturally built into the system. And secondly, the community around it believing the same thing in that celebration of the next generation. I think those are naturalistic healing forces that, again, we need to capture and make visible and utilize in terms of everything that we do.
Indeed. Amber, go ahead.
Yeah, so I just wanted to preface with first that in a past life, I was a social worker within the realm of child welfare. And when I came to Reach Out and Read about almost 5 years ago, the thing that really struck me in thinking about it was that working in child welfare was so reactive. Like by then it's so late in the game, and coming to Reach Out and Read, I was like, wow, like this is so proactive. Like we're getting families right away and we're building those relationships. And I think that, you know, some people already probably have thought that same way or know this, but thinking about everything that we've talked about already to this point today, sharing back with our colleagues in clinics, like what's the one thing that you think would be important for us to like a key point to share about reframing kind of the way we're thinking about Reach Out and Read or the work we do with families.
In a simple sense, relationships matter, and I care about you and your baby's experience together. And that's a part of what matters to me in my work with you. I think framing that being very clear, and not in a judgment way, but in a partnering way, and in an honoring way of the beauty one can witness together. That's where I start.
I think that's a great point. And I'm just going to bring this to another type of conversation that many of us have. I have found that when talking to parents who are vaccine hesitant over, and this is over the years, not just COVID, right? One of the most powerful moments in the conversation is when I gently remind them that they and I have the same exact goal, which is to keep their child as safe from harm as possible.
Nice.
And that's a unifying moment, and it's a relational moment to say, this is, we're on the same side here. I'm not opposing you here, right? And I think that reminder and calling that out occasionally does help. I want to ask one final question before we go to our break. On your very last slide, you made a comment that I think is really important about how not every interaction needs to be perfect, right, in order to have value and all. And I think after hearing all this, it's so easy to be filled with this zeal and to message this in a way that runs the risk of having a parent feel, I can't possibly do this. Oh my goodness, I need to be present and for my child every single second. And if I get any of this wrong, I'm going to mess it up. And we know that's not true.
No.
Do you have a word of advice of how to temper this so that we don't create a sense of failure or guilt when messaging to parents?
First, you have to believe it yourself. Your own mindset. I mean, the scientific data would say that, baby, and if one looks at that attunement process of responding to a baby's initiatives to families, on average, naturalistically, parents only respond 30% to the overtures of kids normally. And so, and then secondly, that sense of disconnection or disrepair is a part of natural human development, separation of unit. There's always opportunities for repair. Thirdly, there's so much redundancy of positive human development over time. Good old Brazelton, who, I had the privilege of knowing, used to, one of his first comments that always struck with me was that every developmental stage may not be done perfectly. Some parents are better at one stage than another. That's just, and there's always opportunities for healing and recovery all along the way. So that the myth of once damaged, always damaged is just not accurate. And thereby, but you have to believe it first in your bones. And then when you're with families that share with you either their sense of doubt, or they share with you the struggles they've been, or in fact having with you today, that you don't get swept up into the sense of hopelessness. Whereas you carry, and again, right back to Brazelton, his message was every family, no matter who they are, when they leave the medical encounter with us, have to have a sense that they have had a more positive experience and a future positive sense than with the way they walked in the door. Our mindset matters, and that's a healing force that we give in our relational health with families.
It always reminds me of what I've told our learners in every pediatric encounter. There's two questions being asked, whether they're being asked specifically or not. How's my child doing? And how am I doing as a parent? And if we don't answer those, we've missed out something key.
Yes.
Thank you again so much for spending your time and knowledge with us today. It's always a delight. Thanks again. And with that, Amber, I'll send it back over to you.
Yeah, so thank you, Dr. Willis, for sharing this morning. Now we're going to kick off our break with Molly Fields from Interstate Books for School. Feel free to ask Molly any questions during this time, but also take a break, rest, relax, and we'll meet back at 11:13. And with that, I'll hand things over to Molly.
Hi, everybody. It's so good to see you virtually. I am so excited to see you next year, hopefully in person. Just a quick word about all the new things that we're doing. We are adding more languages. We are trying to get more diverse books, and we're just trying to help you guys do your amazing, amazing work. If you have any questions about how to use our website or your free shipping or any other questions, please let me know. New languages coming, new languages are here. And for those who are worried about the Afghani refugees, especially the ones in Wisconsin, we are working as fast as we can, given the climate, to get the new languages built up and into your hands.
Thanks, Molly. And again, if you all have questions for Molly during this time, feel free to ask them in the chat or unmute yourself. Otherwise, we'll see you back at 11:13, a couple minutes early to get started again. All right, everyone, I'm just gonna give another minute as we start heading back from our break. So I will introduce our next speaker in just about a minute. If you're able to turn your cameras on, please do so. And I'm just gonna reshare our slides again. We are going to go ahead and go into our next presentation of the day. I hope that you're all ready and refreshed to hear some great content. I would like to welcome our next speaker, Dr. Anna Miller-Fitzwater. Dr. Miller-Fitzwater is a clinical associate professor of pediatrics at Wake Forest University School of Pediatrics. She's also the medical director of Reach Out and Read North Carolina, and she played a pivotal role in the design and assessment of Reach Out and Read's national expansion of the Beginning at Birth model or initiative. I've had the privilege of coordinating with Dr. Miller-Fitzwater for our most recent webinar and for today's presentation. And the one thing I've noticed most is her passion for the work she does with families in those earliest visits and partnering with parents. So that's why I'm excited for you all to hear her today. So with that, I will give you the power, Dr. Miller-Fitzwater. All right.
I think I have it, Amber. Let's see if this works. And thank you so much for the introduction. Maybe it's going to work. Let's see. There we go. It skipped the first slide. Oh, no, it's there. Okay. I'll just start with sort of our objectives. So over the next 40 minutes, we'll go over a little bit more specific to why literacy promotion and forming those safe, stable, and nurturing relationships are important and linked together. Dr. Willis already did a good job setting this up a little bit. We'll dive into it a little bit deeper. And then we'll go over sort of how to do this and how to incorporate this into a Reach Out and Read model, highlighting the birth to 5-month model, as I'm more familiar with that, as you heard from Amber. So I think just a place to start would be sit back and think about and remember, you know, the most impactful time you've spent sharing a book or interacting with a children's book. In many instances, I suspect that there's going to be someone else in your memory. It's not going to just be you with the book. So books and relationships are intertwined, and it's about creating those moments like the one you're remembering perhaps right now. There we go. So we start with nurturing relationships. Those relationships form the foundation of overall, sorry, it's taking us a second to click forward, overall brain growth, which then leads to what we hope to see, which is health and well-being, total health and well-being, including high school graduation rates and positive outcomes through life. If you think about language development, even if we weren't thinking about relationships, which you have to, is because language development is a social process. We can't learn language passively. Language is learned in an iterative sort of back and forth motion and interaction. And it really happens in those everyday moments that Dr. Willis was talking about. So book sharing, narrating your day, telling family stories and narratives, singing. Those moments are very, very powerful. And it's dependent on amount, the quality, what language. If you're competent in more than one language, speak all the languages you know. The age. So the age of the exposure is very important. You're already developing those pathways from the moment actually even before you're born. So it needs to occur early and often, and in the context of a positive interaction. Media is not as effective. I think it's sort of lost steam, but I know that when I had my children, everybody suggested that I get the Your Baby Can Read videos and things like that. Everybody, not in my context of work, but everybody around me said that was something I should get. And really, a book in a lap is going to be way more effective than that. So we know that reading aloud is a positive parenting activity. Activities like reading aloud result in a 33% reduction in the probability of social emotional deficit and risk of developmental delay. We'll talk a little bit about positive parenting activities and their ability to mitigate ACEs in just a moment, but it truly is a positive parenting activity. Other positive parenting activities, playing, storytelling, family meals, things that Dr. Willis spoke about in the last hour. So when we think about Reach Out and Read, I'm going to use sort of the context of an iceberg. And we've always thought about relationships, but maybe just not as intentional. So, and if you're not really deep into Reach Out and Read, perhaps through an outside lens, you may just see Reach Out and Read as a way to promote school readiness, early literacy skills, language development, and maybe a little bit of social emotional development, but there's a lot more underlying that. And we'll go into that in just a little bit. So as you're looking at sort of outcomes and lifelong well-being, back to the first slides. So Reach Out and Read is a policy level sort of intervention that occurs in primary care that helps build the skills and knowledge of parents to help form those stable, responsive relationships that then go on to help promote health and well-being throughout the lifespan. And they do this through the relationships, and they do this through the foundation of those safe and stable, positive relationships that children have and the positive experiences. I know Dr. Willis spoke about the Preventing Childhood Toxic Stress policy statement that's also linked here, and I encourage you all to read that as well. So the briefest of brief slides on ACEs. We've been stuck for 2 generations thinking about ACEs and how they affect the risk for negative health outcomes and how they're correlated. And I think, it's time to move beyond that and think about, well, what can we do about ACEs? And we know that those positive childhood experiences can greatly affect and mitigate the effects of ACEs. So this slide was actually shared in Dr. Willis's talk as well. So the positive childhood experiences can reduce depression in adulthood by 66% if you have 4 ACEs. But not only can they reduce the effect, they can actually mitigate it and overcome the effects of ACEs. So the more positive childhood experiences you have, they have a greater effect than ACEs on whether children flourish. So we can do something about ACEs. And so it's time for a reframe. It's time to think about those positive experiences and how they can impact the trajectory of children's lives. So, here's our original thought of sort of Reach Out and Read and the tip of the iceberg. But what we know is the foundation of that really, really is these healthy relationships, the security and the interaction and attention from caring adults. So that forms the basis on how what you see the outcomes of school readiness, literacy, and language development, that's what's underlying that and what we really have to be intentional to point out going forward. So if you think about their Reach Out and Read logic model, before it really was sort of providers encourage parents to read aloud with children. Parents read aloud with children because they actually do find us to be a trusted source. And then there is a positive impact on early language development, school readiness. But again, there's so much more underlying that. So Reach Out and Read, actually what it's doing is it's giving parents the skills and tools to create those moments that help children learn and thrive. Reading every day or reading aloud as a positive parenting activity, the formation of safe, stable, nurturing relationships, which then lead to the positive impacts on early childhood development and long-term health and well-being. So that's the framework with how we want to move forward. And when we think about Reach Out and Read, it's on that foundation of relationships. So we used to sort of think about, books and brains, and books build better brains, which I still have the t-shirt that I love. But we, last year, Dr. Klass inserted the word bonds. So it's now really books, bonds, and brains. So we can't forget the bonds. And remembering that, children are going to love books, not because books exist. They're going to love books because they bring back those positive memories and those positive moments with their trusted caregivers. From the time a baby's very young, books and reading aloud can already help you and your baby enjoy time together and practice language and learn about the world. They can help establish those routines and structures in the daily life with your child, even when things are stressful. Those relationships and routines can help your child handle challenges and stress, and you as well. And then again, the love of books and the language and communication will help your child be ready to learn and be ready to read when they do get to school. So that aspect is still there, but it's really about the relationships and the interaction together. So I think Dr. Willis set it up a little bit last time. Why now? Why at birth? Because you're already making those routines and forming those relationships from the moment a baby is born. So when you think about the birth to 5-month model, what is that and what's different about it? It includes 4 extra visits from a traditional reach out and read, which would be the first week visit, which is generally when the baby's somewhere between 4 and 6 days old. A 2-week or 1-month visit, a 2-month visit, and a 4-month visit. And you may have all 4 of those visits, or you may have 3. But at some point, there are 2 or 3 to 4 additional visits. The difference about this model, though, is it's truly focusing on that parent-child relationship, even more so than the traditional model. It's focusing on those sort of interactions that are back and forth. And then you can, though, still link this to developmental stage and bright futures, because you have to know sort of this background setting to understand how to approach talking with parents about literacy promotion and relationship building. So again, critical time for bonds and connections, new routines, and it's going to increase the dosage of reach out and read that a child receives. So the central message, if I had to, sort of pick one thing, is letting parents know that right from birth, your baby is listening, looking, and learning. So find and enjoy those everyday moments where you can talk, read, sing, and play together with your baby. We will be there to help them know how to do this. It's kind of overwhelming when you have a new baby, understanding how to interact with this very small human that often doesn't interact back. So how do you do that? How in the world would you share a book with a newborn? I don't think this is something that necessarily comes natural and seems awkward at first. So the way you do that is by that face-to-face, eye-to-eye contact. So when you're thinking about how can I position a baby to read, if you remember nothing else from the slide, I think from the presentation, I think this is one of the more important slides to remember is how can I read and still see my child? So you could hop down on the floor with your child, with the child laying there with your book. And you'll notice in this top left photo that the attention is on the mother and the baby, not so much on the child. You can rest the child on your knees and have the book sort of under your face so you can read it, but the child is looking at you. You don't necessarily even have to have a book. You can share language and maybe memorize a song during a diaper change. Siblings can be involved and should be encouraged to be involved, because often it's kind of hard for older siblings to understand what in the world they can actually do with their younger sibling and how they can play with them. And then you'll notice in the lower center photo, that's an older baby, about 4 months. So that baby has actually turned a little bit and they can start interacting with the book more at that time because those babies are reaching a little bit. But this child can very easily turn his head. And in the next photo in the series, he was looking up at his father as well. So in all of these images, you can see that it's not just put the child with no trunkle tone sitting on mom's lap, it's turn the child so mom and dad and big brother or big sister can see the child. You may have a book or you may not have a book. I think books are extremely helpful to prompt dialogue and interaction, but it's really about that interaction and the relationship building between the caregiver and the child. They're not always needed. So again, in one of the books I give out, it includes a song. So I tell families, you don't have to have the book with you. It's really about you and them, but here is a book that can give you an idea of how to share language with your baby. I don't think that always comes naturally. Sometimes it does, but everybody's different. So it can be very, very helpful. If you don't have a book, you should still give early literacy guidance and talk about the relationship building and how to share language. But remember, again, that it's really the caregiver, siblings, and other individuals interacting with the baby that are the stars of the show. When giving a book, the question then becomes what books to choose. So just like traditional Reach Out Read, books can be adapted for the age of the child, but they're not only limited to one set pattern of visits and only one perfect book. So general rules you can use when thinking about what books to find are, find books that encourage interaction, bonding, and or relationship building. Especially in those first couple visits, the book should really appeal to the parents and family so that reading aloud becomes an interacting and fun experience. If you'll remember, babies don't have that mutual attention and engagement till closer to 2 months. So it's more about the parents' enjoyment in the first couple of visits, which is different from what we normally see and think of in the Reach Out and Read program. Ensure diversity of characters in the books. Oh, hold on, just went back. I don't know if we can go back. Ensure diversity of characters and language within the books. So let's see. Hold on, Emma, can you go back a slide? I think it went forward for some reason. I didn't touch it, I swear. One more. Thanks. Oops. And then I think, the most important thing, or one of the most important things, is this should be a way to empower and encourage families. So there are some books that have some negative stories, but try to avoid those. This really should be about positivity and encouragement. I think, Dr. Navsari, I mentioned sometimes parents feel like they're not good enough or they're not perfect. Everybody can do this. Everybody can share language with their baby. There's no one wrong way to do so. So this is really a skill building and a positive model. And then when possible, if you have them, give the books in the parent's preferred language or a bilingual book. If you don't have one in their preferred language, any book is better than no book. So, and parents can be instructed to create stories around the videos. Sorry, Amber, can you just forward the slides? For some reason, it quit letting me do it. I don't know why.
Yeah, I'll try to give you the control and then you can click on it, but otherwise I'm happy to advance the
Okay.
slide. Yeah, so
Yeah, I don't know why.
While we're doing
It's
that.
just not clicking. Okay. So we talked about this a little bit. With traditional Reach Out and Read, the common thinking is that you give the book at the beginning of the visit. That has to be adapted with this age range, because if you hand the book to the child at the beginning of the visit, it will fall on the floor, I promise you. So a better time to do that is probably using it during the exam as a teachable moment. This model is really about demonstrating child-directed speech and being intentional about something you already do. So again, naturally, when we see babies, we walk over to the baby, we say hi, we engage in that child-directed speech. We look at the baby eye to eye. We use voice and song to calm the baby. Say all of those things to the parents and point out when parents do that and really, again, try to buffer their sense of self-esteem and positivity. So empower them and encourage them. Anybody can do this. They are their child's first teacher, and these moments matter. And they are easy, and they will be great, or they are great. Trying to get it to go. I promise we practiced this and it worked perfectly. And of course it's not now. Okay, so again, how can you do this? We'll watch some videos too. Ask the baby sort of questions. If they're older babies, especially, they may gurgle back at you or they may smile, point out body parts, talk about how much the baby's grown, point out when the baby's responding, and then out that the baby especially is recognizing her caregiver's voice, turning to sound and following their face with their eyes. Even newborns will do this. I can do that in the newborn nursery. And babies remarkably will calm much, much easier for their parents than they will for me. So if I can't get a baby to calm down, I simply hand them to their mother or father and the baby will calm. And I point that out when that happens. They already know those voices and they already bond with those parents. Okay. It says I'm controlling
Just
it.
let
but-
me know when to forward.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry. I don't know why it's not working. This worked, again, it worked perfectly, but so we have a video here.
Let's
where
check
you can
those
see
hips.
this.
Hi. Hi, there you are. There you are. Good job. There you are. Do you have anything to say to me? Yes? Do you have anything to say to me? Oh, that's a nice smile. Yeah. Can you tell me a story? Yes. Can you move your mouth and talk to me? There we go. Hi. Yes. Is that true? No. Yeah. 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 Oh, wow. No. Really? Wow. Okay, let's check these toes. Oh, good. Let's check these knees. Good. Yeah. Let's check in here. Good. Yeah. So this is something we always do at home, and it's the beginning of having conversations, right? So when he makes a noise, you talk back, and that's how he learns to have a conversation. Yeah. You got some hiccups. Oh no, you got some hiccups. Huh. Yes. That's a good job. Oh, and you got toots. So this is something we recommend doing at home too, right? It's how he learns to have a conversation. So getting up nice and close, right? And making eye contact and saying, really? Is that true? Huh. And just talking like you normally would. And that's how he learns to go back and forth, right? Right? Are you telling me a story? Huh. Yeah. Yeah. Good job. Yeah. Oh, you did have something to say. I knew it. I knew you did. Yeah. Let's check those.
So I think, what you noticed was that she was interacting with the baby, and she just pointed out, this is the turn taking, this is what we're doing, this is how we're interacting, and this is going to help. So taking those moments just to state what's actually occurring in the moment is what you're looking for. As we go through each visit sort of sequentially, the first visit is going to be a time when parents are still quite overwhelmed. They're really, really tired. The baby will actually respond. They're going to respond again to touch and voice. They're going to be able to be calmed, and they're going to move or respond to lights or sounds. You can link this to Bright Futures as well. Dr. Nafsari already mentioned that just as far as the context of relationships, but again, nurturing routines, physical contact, seeing, read, and talk to baby, and avoiding the TV. So that's the background of where we are, but you have to realize that background to understand that this is a busy visit. You likely won't have time to discuss everything. I also set an agenda when I walk in the room, and if the parents have a list of things they want to talk about that's 15 things long, I may do nothing more during this visit than just introduce the program of Reach Out and Read, and it takes about 30 seconds extra to talk about Reach Out and Read, and then really explicitly state what I'm doing when I'm doing the exam. And that may be all we get to do in that first visit, but you know what? There's going to be a visit in 4 weeks where we'll be able to make up for some things. So, some information, it's not the last time you're going to see the family. And this is true with the traditional model too. If you don't get to say everything you wanted to say that time because there were other things on the agenda, then make them up at the next visit. And these visits are very, very close together, so it's easy to remember. When you do introduce the book, make sure that, again, it's used as a way to interact. So talking about how to position the baby and saying the baby's going to just enjoy the closeness with you, looking at your face and hearing your voice, and acknowledge the fact that this can be awkward. So on the next slide, you'll see this is kind of what you normally walk into. You know, a newborn may be crying during the exam, but what you can see there is the physician is sort of calming the baby, making noises. So when you do that, you know, you say hello to the baby, and then you just explicitly state what you did to calm him down. And then if you see the parents calm him down, explicitly state that too, and say, you know, the baby right now is communicating through action, so pay attention to those cues and respond. And that's as far as you would have to go, and it actually makes a big difference. So when you're looking at the books for the first visit, and this really extends to the 1 month visit too, the purpose is really to find a book that promotes bonding through cuddle time and providing the infant the experience of sort of this extended lullaby-like voice of the parent. You want to find, again, books that inspire and encourage parents. As mentioned, the book content's not as important at this point. Just find something that's meaningful to the parents that they can enjoy. And again, there's no one right way to do this. So if they're feeling especially stressed one day, they don't have to feel like this is one more thing they have to do. This is something they can do when they have time, and it becomes a positive activity. Some ideas for books you may choose there are books that we call sort of tug at your heartstring books. On the Night You Were Born, Guess How Much I Love You, books like that. You could find books that the parents can use to memorize and sing, Head, Shoulders, Knees, and Toes, or another song book, or the anticipatory guidance books, as I like to call them. So Drs. Hutton and Glusman have written several of these, and we particularly like to give out the I Love You Like Sunshine book, because it gets that tug at your heartstrings, but also gives parents some pointers. And it's a really encouraging book. So by the 1 month visit, you know, parents are still worried most of the time. They might be less overwhelmed though, and they're probably less sleep deprived. They haven't just came home from a hospital. And they're already really, even in the newborn hospitalization, parents can already be, they're already attuned to their infants, but even now they're really starting to interpret those behaviors and anticipate responses to behaviors. So the babies are more responsive to calming actions. Again, somewhere between 6 and 8 weeks, they may start to smile more socially, and they can start to lift their head just a little bit. This is the time when we usually have parents start tummy time. So sometimes I can use that with parents in the book and have them just get right down on the floor with their baby. And it's also a time that I like to talk about calming babies, because colic tends to peak just after this visit. So I spend a lot of time talking about singing to the baby and then developing consistent routines to help baby make those transitional states, of which sharing language and reading can be one of those. So this visit is a little less busy. Parents are settled, and you're not talking about vaccines at this visit. Typically, that'll be at the next visit. So if you didn't get a chance to delve into everything Reach Out and Read at the first visit, and the parents had things they wanted to talk about and prioritize, now's the time, if you have time, to go over that at this visit. Again, always prioritizing how to hold their baby, and eye contact, talking, singing, and playing, and modeling this during the physical exam. So the book purpose at this age, again, less important. You can give one of the ones from the first visit as well, as long as it's a different one than you gave. So you could have a combined book list for these 2 visits, or you can just think about things with bright photos. Babies will start to notice really bright pictures at this point too. And some babies will have a preference and respond to those photos. So often we like to use a high contrast book at this visit. Notice though that some high contrast books don't have a lot of words. Those are kind of tough. So, and they don't have pictures either that you can make a dialogue around. They just have patterns. So I tend to stick to bold illustrations, but in a way that I can make a story about it. I find it a little bit awkward to just have patterns and to foster interactions. Those are great too for babies to look at, and you could see which baby, which picture the baby prefers, but it's a little bit hard to have a conversation around a checkerboard. So trying to think about books that have some content that you can create a dialogue around. They can use this for tummy time. They can get down on the floor with tummy time with their baby too, with these books, and then they can advance that tummy time through the next visit so the baby gets more upper arm strength. So as you move to the next slide, you'll kind of see that. So at the 2-month visit, parents are definitely more settled at this point. more rested and a little less frazzled, but they're still sleep deprived. Their babies are still waking up. And they're a little nervous about the vaccines because this is the first visit where they get a lot of vaccines. They get the Hep B and the newborn hospitalization, but they get several at this 2-month visit. The babies are very different at the 2-month visit than they have been in the prior visits. They're starting to look at the parent and smiling. The social smile usually has appeared around the time of this visit. They're starting to be able to hold their head a little bit and push up a little bit when prone. And then they can start to hold their head pretty consistently if you're holding their body in their trunk. So you can use the book from the last visit and stand the book up rather than laying it flat for the baby to help with tummy time. And then again, crawling down there on the floor with the baby and interacting with the baby will help as well. So at this point, babies are really starting to become expressive and show their personalities and show sort of emotions. So again, point those out. Point out the signs the baby's listening, point out the signs the baby's responding. And ultimately just point out what a great job the parents are doing and continue encouraging them. You're going to hear that through every single visit. And we do have a video here.
Hi there, awesome. So the great part about this age is that you're probably noticing that she's becoming a lot more interactive and awake. And at this stage, she loves hearing your voice and seeing your face. So as I'm taking a look at her, I'm just gonna show you some ways that you can be interacting with her at home. So hi there. I'm gonna do your exam. Say it's time for your checkup. All right, I'm gonna take a listen. Let's listen to your heart. Good job. Good job. Oh, is it cold? Say thump, 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 thump. Good job. Let's listen to your lungs. Good girl. Do you see Daddy? Yeah, do you see Daddy?
Hi, Elise.
Yeah, you're doing so good. Let's listen to that belly. Is this your tummy? Is this your tummy? Let's take a listen. Good girl. Gurgle, gurgle. Yeah. Are you hungry? All right. All right, I'm gonna press on your belly. Say tickle, tickle. Tickle, tickle. Good job. Yeah, you got a soft belly, huh? Good job, sweet girl. So this is the perfect age to be reading to Elise. Really, the important thing with reading is you spending time with her and getting to know her. And it's another great opportunity for her to hear your voice and see your face. So really, the point of the book is just to give you something to talk to her about. So as you're flipping through it, you can read the words, but you can also describe the pictures to her. And it's great when you're reading to have the book nice and close to your face so she can see you and see the book at the same time.
All right, Elise, are you ready? Head, shoulders, knees and toes, knees and toes. Head, shoulder, knees and toes, knees and toes. Eyes and ears and mouth and nose. Head, shoulders, knees and toes, knees and toes.
Good job.
Good job, Elise.
That was excellent. You noticed that she looked at your face the whole time and just loved hearing your voice. You guys did a great job.
So the book purpose for the 2-month visit is finding a book that helps the parent feel sort of successful in eliciting responses from the baby. Could be smiles, gurgles, hand curling, sort of leg wiggles. And then you could also use books that help parents sort of learn about babies' emotions and encourage responding. So babies love faces. A couple of books have different emotions with big baby faces. And you can use this to talk to the parents about the fact that their baby's going to show them lots of emotions and expressions over the next forever, really, but they're really going to flourish now. So these are ways you can look for and get to know your baby. And the babies will definitely attend to the faces in the book. Nursery rhymes, again, babies can still be quite fussy at this time. So you can use nursery rhymes to help elicit baby smiles and then help calm the baby when they're upset. At the 4-month visit, babies tend to be sleeping a little bit better by now, so parents are more well rested. And at this visit, you will have noticed a very large difference between the 2-month visit and now. The babies are smiling all the time, they're eliciting your interaction, they're babbling, they're responding to affection, they have good head control, they're starting to be able to support themselves if you support them, and they're starting to reach for more objects and be less colicky. So this is kind of the beginning of this magic period of infancy that's just wonderful. Physicians can interact a lot, older siblings can interact a lot. Usually at the 4-month visit, by the end of the visit, somebody's laughing. It's just a really nice visit. So a video for this, again, you can start to switch and give the book at the beginning if the baby's alert and awake and wants to engage with you. And then really talking about having those conversations with baby. So you can talk to baby and baby will pause and look at you and sometimes babble back. And then again, there's no wrong way to talk to a baby. Nonsense sounds are important. Child-directed speech is important. And just reinforce the idea that babies can't get this back and forth just from looking at a TV screen. So we'll look at the video now and you can sort of see how this works out in practice.
Hi, can I examine you a little more? Yeah, let's do that. I love you, doctor. Right. Does she like bedtime stories sometimes? Have you tried introducing
I
it?
read to her sometimes, and she really love it when I read to her.
Great. Well, I think those bedtime stories can be a great way to share books. It's a relaxing part of the night. It's a time where she can be kind of sitting and cuddling you with being close and enjoy the book. You guys can share that.
Yeah.
It's like a quiet way to decompress the day. When changing a diaper, you can think of different ways to distract her too. Just talking with her is such a good thing to be doing. She loves hearing your voice, and even though she isn't yet, are you talking yet? A little bit?
A little bit.
Yeah, she's going to talk more if she hears your voice even more. Right? And so we can be talking with the books, and that's a way to practice language, but we can also just be talking together.
All right.
Singing songs. Right? What's your favorite one?
Monkey, monkey, monkey.
Well, that singing is going to be really good for you, learning all your words so that you're talking and babbling. We love it. Well, she's really strong. Look how she's already holding her tummy, too. Good work. You did great. Besides, you can definitely be showing her the faces.
I see you. Right?
And she's looking back to you to try to figure out what does it mean.
Yes, look on.
She wants to share the book with you.
What is she doing?
Forth.
See, she's grabbing it.
Yeah, you know what we're supposed to do. I know. You know what we're supposed to do with it. It got frustrating because you couldn't do it. That's okay. I'll see you in 2 months. Okay, beautiful girl?
All right.
All right, bye.
Bye.
So you notice that she used the time during the exam to just sort of talk about, reading and interacting with the baby and to talk directly to the baby and point that out. So I think, again, you can make this streamlined such that it doesn't add a lot of time onto the visit. When we started this in our clinic, it on average only added around a minute to these visits, and it was easily doable without pushing back clinic flow. Oh, hold on. Whoops. So the book purpose at 4 months. This is the book that you're going to use to sort of transition parents into interacting in a fun back and forth manner directly with the book. So the book is going to be used for more engagement here. For that reason, you want to choose board books that have rounded edges and thick pages. And it's really, really fun to use sort of a texture book here, because then you can talk to the families about how their baby's going to start exploring the world with their hands. I often will go into anticipatory guidance about baby proofing at this visit, and I'll link it into, by the time I see you next time, your baby may be able to roll over and roll across a room and get something, because they're going to start reaching for objects. They're going to really like to reach. And sometimes, in the exam room, they'll even reach for these textures here. I also love using a book with animals, because 4-month-olds find animal noises just hilarious. So I will imitate the lion roar or the dog bark. If there's an older sibling in the room, this is a really great time to show just how easy it is to do this. So if there's an older sibling that's 3 or 4, I'll hand them the book and I'll say, read to your baby brother or sister. And almost always, it's really fascinating, the child will walk over, hold the book kind of under their face, stare at the child and start just barking like a dog. And then the baby laughs, and then they all laugh. And I say, this is a moment that you can have together as a family at home. And I think those are some of, my most valuable times as a provider, is seeing the family interactions in the room like this. And then, using that as a time to say, I am interested in you and you as a family. It's not just your baby, it's about those interactions between all of you. Again, you can encourage babies to sort of reach for the pictures and work on those motor skills too, but more and more about sort of the relationship together. So I think key takeaways from the 0 to 5 month model, because it is a little bit different than the traditional model, is encourage warm reciprocal interactions that lead to those moments. And those are the moments, the everyday moments, that build relationships and build brains that lead to overall health and well-being. Model. This isn't something you can just explain to families. It would take too long to sit down and explain it all. It's much easier to just model what you're thinking and then intentionally point it out. That way it doesn't add a lot to the time of the visit, and it's just much easier to grasp. Direct eye contact and face-to-face interactions are crucial. That's what creates the bonding that then supports the attachment and the child's healthy development. It's not holding the child on your lap, having them look at the book. It's holding the child away from you, having them look at your face. Parents need to feel comfortable and confident in how to interact with their infant, and this is a way to do that. If it's feeling awkward, then readjust. I think, the last thing I want any family to do is to get frustrated doing this, because that completely defeats the purpose. So give parents a pass. Say, if this isn't working, come back next visit and we'll talk about ways that may make it easier. I don't ever want a parent to feel like they have to do this as to be a good parent. This is truly a way to bring joy and to make those relationships. There are the videos that I showed, and then a few more videos linked onto the Reach Out Read YouTube channel. In fact, you can find all of the videos there. So I encourage you to check that out. They're all available, and they're also embedded into the online training. And then there are also materials available on the MyRoar resource library when you sign in. So you could go look there. The milestone chart's the one I like the best. The one on the bottom left there, we have that hanging up on our clinic doors where the books are housed. So providers can remember, sort of the context and put themselves in the mindset of that particular visit. But in summary, children learn and thrive optimally through those reciprocal interactions, through the building of the safe, stable, and nurturing relationships. And that really happens in the context of small, everyday moments. It's not something big and grandiose, it's the moments. And it doesn't have to be, again, every day, it's just the moments. Reading aloud is a positive childhood activity that can buffer ACEs and lead to overall health and well-being. So our goal is to sort of model or demonstrate those nurturing and positive interactions between caregivers and their infants from birth that help facilitate language sharing and bonding and attachment. And again, it gives the thought to the family, I care about you as a family, and I care about your child's success. And I often say, your child can be anything. You've got all the tools you need right here in this room. So work with your baby. I'm going to be there for you too. And it's really about thinking very positively and making sure that the parents feel encouraged. The book, even in the earliest visits, does provide a way and a foundation for novel ways of positive interaction and exposure to more diverse language and interactions. The language and the interaction is the most important, but the book certainly provides a template to do that. So a few images. We want to encourage. We want to promote fun between the families and positivity. And then it's okay to be silly. You're gonna feel a little bit silly making animal noises, but get down on the floor with your baby, interact, laugh, play, and have fun.
Thank you so much, Dr. Miller-Fitzwater, for sharing. And we're very excited here in Wisconsin to start incorporating books in that 0 to 5 month space. And we'll just take a few minutes for questions. So if anyone has questions, feel free to ask them in the chat, to use the raise hand feature, or just unmute yourself and let us know what you're wondering. I know, Dr. Jogel, you had some good conversation going on throughout the presentation. Did you have any questions for Dr. Miller-Fitzwater? Okay.
And I can also add my my email address into the chat too. So if anybody has specific questions, I'm happy to answer them via email as well.
Dr. Miller-Fitzwater, I have a question just on behalf of the clinics, because every time we, when clinics go through the application process, there's that barrier there until they get through it. And I am trying to foreshadow and move things through smoothly. But in your experience with the clinics, in terms of implementing the new workflow, since clinics are already doing Reach Out and Read, is this a really big lift, or is it something that's more easily implemented?
It's, in my opinion, more easily implemented. We've seen 3 different programs that have been studied that have started this, and all 3 found that it was easy to do. One in Oregon, one at CHOP, and then my own site. And actually, our providers were really happy to add this on. I had a couple, I'm in a residency clinic, I had a couple of residents sort of say, I wonder why we didn't start this at birth to start with. And then I had to tell them, the whole story behind that. But they really liked it, and they enjoyed interacting with families and found it to be meaningful.
Great,
and we use the same, we use the same pathways that we do for the traditional program. If you need to keep counts separately for the birth to 5 books versus the 6-month to 5-year books, if you have an EMR, you can build in different smart sets or smart phrases to count them differently, or just ours are in different cabinets. So if we wanted to do tick marks, they would be in a different cabinet, that sort of thing. So just think about the reporting as you're starting the program. How can I count this separately and not make it become a burden?
We do have a question in the chat, Dr. Miller-Fitzwater. If it's encouraged to add an additional age ranges of books like 0 to 5 months, or just extend the 6 to 12 month, like for your book choices, I guess.
I think it depends. You have to be careful not to have the book in more than one location, or the family could get the same book. And then I think you can make some adaptations for the 0 to 5 month program, or the birth to 5 month program, with the types of books you choose. It depends on what you have 6 months to 5 years. If you have books there that are really great for having families engage with one another, then you could certainly move them. Ours are funded separately, so I have to keep them separate because they come from different funding streams. So I suspect you'll have to chat with your program specialist about the exact details about that. But I think books can be adapted for different age ranges, especially those first 2 visits. If it's like a storybook, a parent, if they like it, they could certainly bond with their child over that.
Yeah, and Julie, we will be working on a book list to share with our clinics as we roll out our Beginning at Birth initiative, as we invite clinics to join and incorporating these books. And for the first year, as Karen mentioned this morning, we will be purchasing the books for the first year for clinics to participate in this. So that'll give you kind of an idea of like what books you're looking at. And then from there, we'll give guidance on book choices. And Dr. Miller Fitzwater has already been a great resource for helping us think about like what books are appropriate for those age ranges and most fun for families. So with that, we are gonna switch gears into kind of thinking about all the things that we learned today. So thank you again, Dr. Miller Fitzwater. And if anyone has additional questions, especially for these great like practical tips, Dr. Miller Fitzwater has her email in the chat, but also let me know and I can kind of pass those on. So Karen, over to you.
Thanks, Amber. Thank you also, Dr. Anna Miller Fitzwater, for your great talk. It's my pleasure to introduce our next, last, but not the least speaker, Callie Boulware, who is the regional director, executive regional director for the Carolinas, and she's recently expanded her professional mission to expand the high quality work of Reach Out and Read in the Carolinas to the nascent statewide efforts in Virginia and the DC area. Callie is a Reach Out and Read network mentor, colleague and valued leader within the network community. She's always able to provide a fresh, strategic, and appropriately centered, whether it's on Reach Out and Read staff, clinic families, children, perspective to just about any conversation that she joins. She's also been integral in the internal Reach Out and Read training that staff have been participating in throughout this effort for the beginning at birth and early relational health. And we asked her to repeat one of the exercises that she did for the Reach Out and Read networks because we thought it would also be of interest and productive for our clinic staff. So Callie, take it away.
Sure. Thanks you guys so much for letting me be here with you. And thank you, Karen, for that lovely introduction. And thank you, Anna. It's so good to see you and great to hear your presentation as always. As Karen said, we are all of us together on a learning journey and are all learning all the time about how we continue to extend the impact of Reach Out and Read for the children and families that we serve. So excited to chat with you a little bit about this today. So just to confirm, Amber, I'm sharing my screen with slides, correct?
I have them up here.
Oh, you have them, even better.
Attempt to advance the slides. If we run into similar issues, I can advance them. Just let me know.
That'll be great. Thank you so much. Okay, well, we can go ahead and get started when you're ready. And so super excited to chat with y'all here a little bit today. So I know that we are still trying to, I think, end at 30 minutes past the hour. So I'm going to go a little bit quickly through my first few slides here, just to make sure that we have time for as much time in conversation as possible. But one of the things that I wanted to center us around here today is really the thought of what I like to think of as the larger value proposition of Reach Out and Read, and why that's so relevant as we talk about the development of healthy relationships and how we support families in this process. We know that one of the reasons Reach Out and Read works so well for so many families and so many communities is because we have an unprecedented access to children and the adults who care for them in their early years. And you can go to the next slide, Amber. We also know that our families have strong and trusting relationships with the providers that they go and see and that care for them and their children. And the combination of those things are really important, I think, to understand in terms of the grounding of our work in the development of healthy relationships. I like to say that when we're talking about these foundational relationships in partnership with Reach Out and Read, we are just actually telling our full story. We're telling the whole story of what is actually happening when those moments that Anna referenced are realities in children's lives. When you snuggle up and create this moment what's actually happening in that moment that is so very special. So this early relational health lens that we're all looking at our work through is really just deepening what I like to call our value proposition. So we can go to the next slide, Amber. So I think it's really important as we think about this too, to really consider what we understand, what we know, what the research tells us, and why that informs the work, right? So this is kind of the logic model that I like to think about, that I would love y'all to talk with me a little bit about in some time as we get into our conversation. Having young children can be stressful. We know that it can be stressful, and we know that there are moments of stress in a lot of the lives of the families that we care for. And we also know that positive parenting helps to mitigate this stress and build resilience in families. We also know that sharing books and snuggling up with stories together is, by research proven, a positive parenting activity. So therefore, Reach Out and Read and the work we do every day in clinics with families helps to build resilience and mitigate stress for families. So it's a really lovely and easy way to think about this whole story. We've talked a lot, you can go to the next slide, Amber. We've talked a lot about the fact that these relationships matter. We've talked a lot about the moments that matter. And the way I really like to think about this is when a family snuggles up with a story that their provider has given them the book to enjoy together, we know that a whole lot more is happening in that moment than just the sharing of words. Words matter. We talk a lot about the building of brains and how we feed brains with all of these words and things, and they absolutely matter. But what really matters even more is that interaction. It's the serve and the return. It's the eye contact. It's the time together. It's the touch. It's all of the things that happen in that moment that we often describe as the sharing of words, but it's a whole lot bigger than that. So this is why those relationships and those moments that we are helping to catalyze and thinking holistically about those together really matter for the children and families we serve. Okay, next slide. So we talked about this a little bit before. Reach Out and Read has been, using this iceberg to kind of help us think a little bit about how this all fits together. So super simply stated, the way I like to think about this is we've talked historically a lot about that little chunk sticking out over the water before. What are the things that we can see and observe and wrap our hands around at the end of, let's say, 5 years of Reach Out and Read intervention that show us that we've been successful? Evidence matters. We need to know that what we're doing is working. And we've used school readiness and early language skills and things like that to help show us what we are doing in the exam room that is meaningful and impactful to families. But what we're looking at more now is really this bottom of the iceberg. We're looking at all of the other things that happen and build and stack on each other and scaffold day by day by day in those everyday moments that Anna's referencing, that help us to get to that point that we see above the iceberg. Sometimes these are the harder to see moments. Sometimes these are the things that we don't measure at every single turn, but we know the cumulative effects of these things over time. So I hope this helps you a little bit, but the iceberg really helps me to think a little bit about when we talk about building moments and why relationships matter. That's the under the iceberg chunk, and the top of the iceberg needs that bottom chunk to be strong and large so that that top chunk can get above the water. So that's how I like to think about why we're doing the work in this way. So the other thing I think a lot about is if relationships matter, and we know that children and families and the relationships they have together matter, what also matters is that we think holistically about relationships, internally and externally. What about our relationships with each other? What about our relationships with our programs? What about our providers' relationships with their families? All of the different layers of relationship need to connect and all be valued and prioritized so that we can get to the place where the relationships that our families have also matter, right? So I want to think a little bit today about our everyday work together in partnership in programs. So I'm talking about Reach Out and Read staff. I'm talking about our medical providers, our amazing site coordinators, volunteers, community members, all of the pieces of the pie that come together in that clinical location to create meaningful change for our families. So I wanted to do this today by just sharing 2 or 3 examples of ways that I have seen on my own programs team really meaningful partnership with the relationships at the center that has created greater impact in our work. And then we're going to break into a couple of questions that I would love y'all to dig into in smaller groups. So I want to talk first a little bit about this third bullet here, this word of social impact partners. Our staff several years ago went on an exciting and a little bit scary journey to change the way that we interacted with our providers. And we wanted to change the way that we approached our relationship with them. As we all know, Reach Out and Read providers are very much superheroes. They do unbelievable things every day with families, and they prioritize this intervention and this way of caring for families on top of the long list of other things that they have to do. That is an absolute given. But what we kept hearing from our doctors was, when you come and sit down and talk with me, please stop apologizing for taking my time. Please stop apologizing for how much time this is going to take that you want me to do. I am here because I care about this, and I know this works, and it's meaningful to me, and it's meaningful to my families. So let's just get to business and figure out what we need to do together. And it really began to change the way that we saw our partnership with the relationship with our provider at the middle. And we changed into what we call a social impact partnership with our medical provider community. And we sit down together now and we ask different questions in the beginning of all of our technical assistance visits. We might have a conversation about that provider and their family, about how they're doing. What are the things that are keeping them up at night? What are the things that are stressful in their clinic environment? How are they doing as a human being? And then we can get to all of the things with Reach Out and Read. We're focusing on our relationship with them as a person. And then we can work on all of the other pieces of high quality implementation of Reach Out and Read that matter. I think a similar way to think about that is how we are really working with a lot of our providers, and our medical directors like Anna and others are helping us to think how we train and support providers and how they open conversations with families. What are your first questions with your families? Are they a checklist sort of thing that you have to get done because that feels like a checklist to everybody? Or is it a question just about them, about how they're doing? Is it a question that opens a dialogue that allows you to begin to build a relationship together? And that relationship is the basis upon which all other strength can be built in that work. And then I think a third example of how this focus on relationships has changed some of our technical assistance and relationships with our programs is there's a lot of examples over the pandemic, but just over the last few months, we were hearing a lot as Reach Out and Read staff that our sites are tired. There's a lot of exhaustion going on in that space. Our clinic staff are exhausted. Our providers are exhausted. There was just a lot of feeling of tired and stress, cumulative stress over time. And so we decided the most important touch point we could have with our programs in partnership right then was a thank you note, just a note to let them know how much we appreciated all the work they were doing, how much we cared about them, how much we were thinking about them, and sending a hug their way. And it is the sort of the findings of our programs team that not only does this really build meaningful relationships between Reach Out and Read programs and their communities and Reach Out and Read staff, but it also creates higher quality implementation of Reach Out and Read. It creates greater connections between a clinic and their community. It creates wonderful opportunities for shared bright spots between clinic staff and each other who are tired in staff meetings and can find something together to celebrate in difficult times. So it's just important to think about the ways that all of those relationships come together and change the way that we even do our logistical work together. So let's go on to the next slide. I want to spend a couple of minutes now in conversation together. And I believe, Amber, we're breaking into a couple of smaller groups, correct? Okay, so that will happen with all the magic Zoom on the back end. And I would love you all in your smaller groups to look at these questions, and we can copy and paste these and put these in the chat as well. But really look at the ways that as a group, foundational relationships as a focus might be a component of practice change. What might that look like on the clinic side? How can this focus really impact the way the Reach Out and Read team and clinic staff build their own relationships together? How could this focus be a place to start conversations with peers or other providers around relationships? And how does this support strength-based approaches with families? And then finally, how do you engage and partner with families? And what does that mean to the folks that are in your breakout group? So we can populate, I can copy and paste these right here for you into the chat box. And then I would love you to go into breakout rooms for, we're gonna have about maybe about 8 minutes, not a huge amount of time, but we'll have about 8 minutes to dig into just a little bit of this that you can together. And then if somebody in that group wants to sort of capture any big aha moments, really important thoughts that you came together with as a group, and then we'll come back at the end and be able to share out a little bit on how this focus on relationships might impact things at the clinical level. Does that all make sense? Awesome. Okay, go forth and have a great conversation, and then we will see everybody back in about 7 or 8 minutes.
Hi everyone, we're gonna work to get you all in your rooms. All right. Oh, I think. I think everyone here right now, you should have received like a pop-up on your screen that says to join your breakout room. Do you see that at all? No. Okay. I'll just move you in there. Is there anyone that's currently still left in the main room? Do you see a pop-up on your screen, or are you here? Some folks might be away at this time.
All right, welcome back, everybody. And okay, Amber, you give me a heads up. I don't know how many people there were, so I don't know when we're all back.
It looks like we're still missing a few.
Okay, we'll give folks just a second. And maybe in the interest of time, we can go ahead and just jump in. And I would love to hear any volunteer sort of aha moments or reflections from breakout groups that were meaningful when thinking about how this looks in the clinic working together. I will start by sharing. Oh, Depesh, lovely. You can start.
There you go. Thank you. Our group had a brief but lovely conversation talking about how useful it was to hear these concrete examples, because there's all the wonderful theories and ideas, but how do you actually do it? So the videos and tips were really, really helpful in that. There was also a notation that often we do many of these things, but that to do more of it and to do it with intention is actually really helpful. And that changing some of the focus of talking about ROAR from the numbers and how many books and which books to, hey, what are tips and ways that we can exchange with each other on how to do it, that we can mitigate ACEs, and that we need to send that message to parents too, because sometimes there's worries that they have about something that might have happened long ago, and they think, well, I can't possibly change it now. Well, no, there is hope. We can change. We can always change, and you can do it. And the importance of validating parents, including through brief observations, saying, I noticed this eye contact. This must mean that you're doing a great job of talking with your baby and interacting and building those neurons. Yay, good work, you.
Love that. Love that strength-based validation, Depesh. Thank you for sharing. That's great. Karen, I see your hand up.
Yeah, we had a small group. We did not have a clinician on our group, but we had more management people that talked about how they were connecting with providers to engage them with the Reach Out and Read programming, asking them what their favorite books were and their favorite books of their kids, and offering to try to buy those books to have them within for the Reach Out and Read programming. And then also this woman has a health system who purchases the books, and she challenged her system to do more during the current pandemic that we have. So she has books. What really resonated with her during this talk was talking about the love, the sharing of the love through Reach Out and Read, and that she's working on that in the clinics, and loves that came out. Doesn't always come out in the training, but it's come out. But she has books that she's going to give to every child that comes in for a COVID shot, so they have something positive to do while they're waiting during their 15 minutes before they go home.
Oh, that's great. I love that. I love that connection to moments that we as adults remember. And those are the same moments that we're trying to create for other families. So there was a wonderful observation in our group, I'll add, from Colleen, back to the first sort of question about how could this be a component of practice change, thinking about the constant pressures of time. And, you know, we're always in a hurry to get the things done. We don't have time, but a component of practice change could be a little bit of grace and the allowance to take the time, even if it takes an extra minute or two, if there's sort of consensus in the community and within any sort of clinic or practice around it's allowable to take the time to do this thing. It matters that much. And I thought that was a neat way to think about practice change. Colleen, I hope I represented your thought well. It was a good one. Any other thoughts that folks want to share from their groups? Well, I just want to say in sort of final closing for this, that please understand and welcome and embrace that this is an absolute ongoing learning journey for all of us as communities, about the importance of these relationships and the roles that we can all play in making these moments realities for families. So we're all on a learning journey together, and I look forward to continuing to learn from you and all the things that you try as well. And just really appreciate the time to be here with you today, and keep up your tremendous work, everybody.
Thanks so much, Callie, and to all of you here for participating in these rich discussions. Even though we aren't able to meet in person this year, I hope this gave you an opportunity to kind of connect and get some new ideas. Now, today is not only a day for learning and sharing, but it's also a day for celebrating. And celebrating like the great things that are happening within our Reach Out and Read network and beyond. So I'm going to turn things over to Alex to kick off our awards. Awesome. Thanks, Amber. I'm so excited to present these awards. So you may remember, or you may know, last year we created the Reach Out and Read Wisconsin Excellence Award, and we're continuing to award that this year and in the future. And this is to honor the passion, creativity, and energy that all of these individuals are sharing or are doing with their programs, establishing best practices, establishing community partnerships, and just really furthering the work across the state. So this year, our first award winner has been the clinic coordinator at her clinic since they started a program in 2015. Since the beginning, she has worked to ensure that her clinic achieves the highest quality rankings and works to get everyone in the clinic involved. A couple examples of things that she is also doing, or why she was nominated for this award. She reaches out to new clinic coordinators within her health system to help onboard them and learn the ins and outs of running a Reach Out and Read program. She explains book ordering, progress reports, and helpful tips for tracking patient and book data. She has attended each of the Reach Out and Read Wisconsin annual meetings and often takes back her learning to the clinic and shares with the other clinic staff. She condenses and shares relevant information from our monthly newsletters with other providers and staff. She worked with the clinic's maintenance department to create a little free library that stands outside of the clinic so that everyone in the community can enjoy free books and not just the families that are served by Reach Out and Read at the clinic. And if a family does forget their book in the exam room, she makes it her responsibility and mails that book to the family, so no book is forgotten. So we are proud to announce that Ginger Ambrose of UW Health Oregon Family Medicine is the first winner of the Reach Out and Read Wisconsin Excellence Award. And I am not sure if Ginger was able to make it on today. No, I don't think Ginger was able to join us, but she was very excited to join and was hoping she'd be able to be here today, which just, again, like her communications to us up until leading till today just shows her commitment to Reach Out and Read. Yes. And then I don't think I said this in my intro, but we do have 2 award winners this year. So our second award winner is the medical consultant for her clinic's Reach Out and Read program. She was nominated by her clinic's manager, and the clinic manager says that she is so deserving of this recognition. She has been the medical consultant at her clinic since they started Reach Out and Read in 2015. She helped to secure startup funding and has secured ongoing funding for Reach Out and Read at her clinic, while also being instrumental in advocating for system-wide funding for Reach Out and Read for all the clinics in her health system. She connected with the IT department to create a specific Reach Out and Read report to assist with progress report submission. And I believe it was 2 years ago, she participated in a local news feature, a TV news feature, to increase awareness about Reach Out and Read at the clinic and in the broader community. So our second winner for this award this year is Danielle Gindelsberger from SSM Sun Prairie Family Medicine. We are so happy. I think she might actually be here, but congratulations, Dr. Gindelsberger.
I think she is on. Yes, Danielle, do you want to say anything quickly? She's shaking her head no.
That's okay. I will be stopping at the clinic next week. We have a certificate and a gift card for this recognition. But just thank you so much for all that you do and for how supportive you are of Reach Out and Read and everything you're doing for the children and families that you serve. Okay, and then Depesh is going to give a little introduction to our newest award. So Depesh, take it away.
Great. Thank you so much, Amber. I'm always fond of saying that I like to think of working for the benefit of children and families as being like a constellation, right? It takes lots of different stars to make that work. And so we're proud to introduce an award that we're calling the Stellar Partner Award. It really highlights the other stars alongside the many stars we work with that help make Reach Out and Read possible. I'm very pleased to announce that the first recipient of the Stellar Partner Award for this year is Senator Joan Ballweg of the Wisconsin State Senate. I'll just say a couple of words here. The senator and I think we first started to interact probably around when she was an early learning fellow for the National Conference of State Legislatures. And we talked about many issues that are of common interest, including engaging around Reach Out and Read. And I think it's fair to say that, she understood the importance of early learning, has a wonderful background in education herself, so I didn't need to sell her on that. But it was the moment, I think, of visiting a clinic that things really clicked, to see the magic and the power of what the Reach Out and Read model offers. And one of the ways in which we've worked for several years, and I'm proud to say really came finally to fruition this year, was being able to reflect this in funding in the state budget. And while budgets can be, dry in a process and all that, I'm also fond of the statement that budgets, in a sense, are the reflections of our what we hold important as a society, as a state, as communities. And to have funding for Reach Out and Read, yes, the dollars are wonderful. We appreciate it so much. It's going to help us with so many things, but it's also a clear statement of the relationship between the state of Wisconsin and programs like Reach Out and Read and the children and families that are being served. And if it wasn't for your advocacy, your steadfast and continual advocacy on this over the years and multiple tries, it wouldn't have happened. So thank you, Senator Ballweg, for being such a wonderful, stellar partner and part of our constellation in the Reach Out and Read universe. Please, if you want to take a couple of moments to say a few words, go ahead.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Nazaria. Yes, I think in this year's budget, it was almost a piece. It was one of the times that you didn't remind me that you were looking to have some funding, but I had a better opportunity this time as being a member of Joint Finance Committee to put that in front of my partners that were making the final decisions. And I think some of the that Senator Reach for emphasis in reading education. So I think this really resonated with the other members on Joint Finance. And so it was, after trying this during a couple budgets, it was the right time. And I know it's all of you that are on this call that really are the ones that do the work, but hopefully this bit of cash infusion makes it a little bit easier for you to reach places that you haven't been to yet, who need that extra help, and you'll be able to provide that training component. So I'm very happy to help in this way, and hope it's going to be a benefit for all of Wisconsin children that have the connection with participating clinics. So just happy to do it, and thank you very much for the recognition. I do appreciate it.
You again, and we'll be getting that award over to your office in the near future as well.
Just one last thing you mentioned, I actually had the chance to visit the
So I think we're losing your connection there.
The clinic just out of Wisconsin Dells Lake Delton that were read to a couple of students that were there. And we took some pictures of Wisconsin Dells Lake Delton. And some of my favorite pictures, me reading to kids, made me feel like I was back in the classroom. So thank you very much for the opportunity, and carry on. You all do great work.
Great, thank you. And indeed, those moments of being able to share books with kids remind us again of the whole theme we've had this morning about the importance of those relationships. Great. Amber, I'll send it back over to you.
Yeah, so just a few items to close us out today. You'll find in your conference program additional awards and acknowledgements for our Reach Out and Read Wisconsin clinics. And we truly want to thank you all for what you do every day, because again, like Senator Ballweg said, you're the ones who make this work happen and are advancing the lives of children and families. You will be getting a survey in evaluation sent to your emails after today. We do look at all the comments and feedback in order to make this a valuable and enjoyable day each year for you all. So please, if you have just a couple minutes to complete that. And Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you to all of our speakers and everyone who helped make the day great. And we will see you in person next year in the Wisconsin Dells. Fingers crossed.
And I'm just going to break in and say, Amber, Karen, Alex, the national team that helps out behind the scenes, thank you so much for your work in putting this together. You wouldn't be able to know it, but Amber has been sweating it, trying to get this all happening and working. And you did a great job. So just want to give a round of applause to the team for their hard work on all this.
All right, and with that, that concludes our day. So thank you everyone so much for joining us and spending some time to talk about relationships. So see you next time.